Welcome, everyone. It's 5:45, so we're going to start our pre-meeting that we do in this room. So y'all are welcome to sit through that as we run through our agenda. So at this time, I'll call our pre-meeting to order, and we will have a prayer from Councilman Spencer. And running through our agenda, item 4, we have a few miscellaneous agenda items that we're going to recognize tonight. We will start with Mr. Stiles will be here tonight. We're going to recognize him for winning the Park Fellow Award. So Todd can give us an update on what that is. And then Margie is here to celebrate her on her retirement. So I will mention here, and Margie, if you want to come up and get your box of treats, and Todd, if you want to come up and get this one for Phil. And that way, if you all want to, before we start the meetings, and then you can pass them around if you want to. There's pretty much enough for everyone. But here you go, Margie. And well, Todd, I guess that's Phil's problem for not being here yet. So anyway, just some treats and celebrating your last day and then Phil's award. So we can certainly, if you want to share them, we won't object to that. But anyway, and then item C, we will have, if it's okay with council, we would amend the agenda to add the wastewater bond issue as well. I think we have a couple people here to present on that, or we're planning on being here. So if they're there, we could add that. Does that sound like a good spot to add that item in? Okay. Item 5, public hearing. We will start with item A, Mr. Sanders.
Yes, I'm going to let Mr. Barron address all the planning and zoning referrals to the council tonight.
Okay, Mr. Barron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So first, we'd like, if we could, move bill number 88 from bills pending to attach it to item A so that it pairs up with the rezoning case that's for the same property. And so bills 87 and 88 would be a rezoning of some property on Industrial Drive from a manufacturing category to a C2, a general commercial category, and then also approval of a 4-lot subdivision of that property.
Okay, so item 13B under bills pending, we will take up the first bill under public hearing is for 87. You want to take up 88 first? Or just do 87 and then 88?
87 and then 88 at the same time under public hearings.
Okay, we'll do those both under item A. So Emily will read both of those when we do that.
Excellent.
Any questions of council on that, on 87, 88? And then item B, number 28.
Okay, so for item, for the resolution under item B for public hearings, it's for a small cell tower to be located on public right-of-way. It's basically the same or very similar to the next item under public hearings, item C, another small cell tower to be located on public right-of-way. The first one, item B, is at 818 Montana Street. And then the second one, item C, is located at 917 Jackson Street. I've passed out a correspondence packet to all the council members. There are 3 items that are contained in the correspondence packet. One of them was an email chain that we received over the weekend. I think the council received the first of those, but I did take a moment to respond to some of the items from that citizen and included the responses, and she had responded as well yet this afternoon. So it is a complete email chain. Also, the same citizen had a property owner for adjacent to the case on Jackson Street had written some correspondence prior to the P&Z meeting, so I've included in this packet as well. And then the third item within this packet was some items from the cellular tower consultant that's basically the applicant for these cases, representing the applicant, Mr. Joe Marcus. There are some questions as to why existing poles could not be used at both of these locations. And so I forwarded that question to Mr. Marcus. He replied. And so that correspondence is basically the last page of this packet. I've put a box around it. And Mr. Marcus is here this evening to represent both of the cases for small cell towers that's on the public hearing agenda.
Okay, thank you. So at that time, when we open the public hearing for that bill or resolution, he's welcome to come forward to the podium too. Okay, wonderful. Any questions at this point? Okay. And then the next item is the appointments, and Mrs. Strope will be here this evening. She'll be late, so if she's not here by the time we do this, these are all the routine boards and commissions. None of them require 2/3, and they've all been presented before administration. So we'll move that forward with that motion. Item 7A, Ms. Senzi will give us a brief update on the, along with Republic Services. So anything to add at the moment? Okay, sounds good. And then item 8, announcements. It looks like under item B, Mr. Sanders will give us the update on the building code again.
Yes, ma'am. I'd also like to make an announcement about the spring bulky item pickup at the same time.
Okay, sounds good. And item 11, consent agenda. Any questions over here?
I noticed
Yes. Mr.
one,
Moran?
just a minor thing. The repair contract for cold junction pumps, item D, the dollar amount in here is wrong on the title here, but in the in the finance paperwork, it's correct. It should be 26,641. So it's a little different. Not sure typo or what happened.
Okay. Did you get that, Emily?
So it's right.
Okay.
Paperwork. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Marash. Item 12, bills introduced. We'll run through these quickly. Number 90, Mr. Marash.
Yes, thank you. Let's see, make sure I got the right one here. This is just a item went through Transportation and Traffic Commission to prohibit parking on east side of Buena Vista Street. It's between Edmonds and there's a cul-de-sac on this street. It's over in the Housing Authority property area. And it would limit parking to the on the east side.
Any questions? And number 91, Mr. Marash.
Another transportation and traffic item. This is over off the Circle Drives West Circle and North Circle. It limits one space at the intersection just south of North Circle on West Circle.
Any questions? And number 92, Mr. Molman.
Thank you. This bill would amend Chapter 25 relating to projects under Chapter 353, the Urban Redevelopment Corporations Law, to conform the city code sections relating to procedure to current state law.
Okay, any questions? And number 93, Mr. Molman.
Thank you. This bill would supplementary appropriate 575,000 for demolitions and acquisitions in the Capitol Avenue redevelopment area.
Okay, any questions? And item 13, bills pending. Those will have both been taken up. And then we have 3 resolutions, so 2 will have been taken up. Number 30, Mr. Molman.
Thank you. This resolution would approve a land swap agreement with the state of Missouri relating to some land over at the Missouri State Penitentiary redevelopment area.
Okay, any questions? Okay, and that pretty much goes through the summary of the agenda. And it looks like tonight we will have some Boy Scout troops visiting. I don't know if they've arrived just yet. They're coming in. Perfect. So we can bring them to the podium in the beginning to recognize we'll recognize them. And then also with the public hearings, you don't have to have signed up before if there's anyone here to speak on any of the hearings. Otherwise, there is a list outside if anybody would like to sign up. So with that, I'll call the pre-meeting adjourned and we'll start our council meeting at 6 p.m. Thank
Could
you.
I ask Bill
Yes.
if he got his cookies or?
We didn't know if Todd was going to turn those over, so he had to do that now that you've walked in. So welcome. Thank you.
See if that's the case. By the way, we have someone texted us on 874-9390 and said that KMI
Sure, those guys. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Welcome, everybody. It's 6 o'clock, so we're going to get started. I love having a lively city council chambers. That's what this is all about, is having members of the public here, and we're just really glad to have all of you. So thank you for being with us tonight. And before we start our meeting, we will have a prayer led by Councilman Spencer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Amen. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. I will now call to order the March 21st, 2022 City Council meeting. This meeting is also available to watch and join virtually with the link on the agenda on the city's website, jeffersoncitymo.gov, and also the call-in participation is listed on there as well. Mrs. Donaldson, roll call, please.
Fitzwater.
Present.
Hensley.
Present.
Kimna.
Here.
Lester.
Here.
Schreiber. Spencer.
Here.
Spicer.
Present.
Vogt.
Here.
Ward. Here. Wiseman.
Present.
Item 3, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda by adding item 4C, the wastewater bond issue. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 4, miscellaneous agenda items. Actually, I'm going to back up because we have our scouts here. We always like to recognize them first. So we have a couple of scout troops with us. We have Troop 11, and you're welcome to come up, all of you, and Troop 3011. So from First Baptist Church. And if you all would like to come to the podium, we're very happy to have you here, and you can give us your name. You might have to pull the mic down so we can hear you if you talk into the mic, and let us know your name and which school or troop or which one you're from, and if you're working on a certain badge. Welcome.
My name's Nolan Vassos. I'm from Troop 11.
Welcome.
I'm Eli Green, and I'm from Troop 11, and I'm working on the Citizenship and the Community Merit Badge.
My name is Matthias Keller. I'm from Troop 11. I'm also working on the citizenship badge.
Great.
I'm Eva Savansky, and I'm from Troop 3011.
I'm Mariana Cutter, I'm from Troop 3011.
I'm Lily Weeks, I'm from Troop 3011.
I'm McKenna Longenecker from Troop 3011.
Wonderful. We're all really glad to have you here, and we're glad that you get to see the city council working firsthand and city government, and glad to have you all in attendance tonight. And I believe you also have some troop leaders. You're welcome to come forward as well, if you'd like. Do you have any questions for us before we get started? Any tips, questions? Well, this is going to be a good council meeting tonight, so glad you could be here for it. Does council have any comments? Well, with that, we would invite you all forward, and we can get a group picture of, again, your leaders are welcome to come in, and council will get behind us. So why don't you come on up, and we're just happy to have you here. Item 4, miscellaneous agenda items. We have some special recognitions we're going to do this evening. I'd like to welcome Mr. Phil Stiles and our Parks and Rec Director, Todd Spalding, is going to give us some information about Phil, who won the Parks Fellow Award, and we're very proud of him. So take it away, Mr. Spalding.
Thank you, Mayor. We're here to recognize Phil. 2 weeks ago, Phil was recognized by our Missouri Parks and Recreation Association as the Fellow Award, which is our highest honor in Parks and Recreation. And it's for outstanding service and leadership to our association, and we couldn't be more proud. It's interesting being here a few years, just how much Phil does, and it takes, every day there's something new that I know and learn of what he does, and the connections and relationships that he builds for our community to really increase the quality of life. Not only is he a huge asset to our community, but to see him as a mentor and as a leader to the other parks and recreation professionals in our state. It's pretty amazing. And he has served also as 2 times as the Missouri Parks and Recreation president. So he's very involved and a wonderful mentor and leader to our association. We have a great video here to show you, so hope you enjoy it.
Bill Stein. After the 5 services, there are many bills. So we will do our best to make this clear. Bill graduated from Mizzou with a bachelor's in Parks and Recreation and continues to be an avid typist. He never misses the NPRA conference and is often spotted with longtime friend and college roommate Mike Riggs. The stories these two can tell is best left for another time and most likely will require a refreshing beverage or two. He began his career with the Columbia Parks and Recreation and soon realized he was destined to work with a far superior department. Coach Jefferson has served as a recreation supervisor. His responsibilities included youth sports, special events, aquatics, and the ice arena. Later, he'll serve as the division director of the recreation facilities and special services. He currently runs all community and special events for Jefferson City. He is well known and respected in his community and works with many businesses and organizations to put on the best special events the city has to offer. He has several awards from community organizations for all his work with these events, most recently being named a Jefferson City Area Chamber of Commerce Exceptional Employee Award finalist in 2021. A person who is loved, trusted, and respected by all. Bill has mentored and supported many professionals in our field, and not just for J.C. Parks, but many other NPRA members as well. He has taken on many volunteer roles during his many years of service, including serving as NPRA president not once, but twice since joining NPRA in 1983. Bill has served on or chaired just about every committee imaginable, every board position imaginable, and found ways to give back to the profession in every way imaginable. Committees chair, municipal section chair, secretary, treasurer, conference planning committee, conference committee chair, professional certification, board member at large, region director, and most recently answering the call to fill a vacant president's position. If you ever need words of wisdom or just someone to talk to, you know you can trust Bill and receive the guidance you seek. He is a wealth of information, and when he has something to say, we suggest everyone listen. Friends and coworkers can sit for hours to listen to all this. So many laughs and notes that we want to hear over and over again. The self-proclaimed Fossil Bill is responsible for taking new employees on a tour of the J.C. Park system, unofficially called Bill trips. His Billisms are the best. Just ask him to say, I've heard them. From China or Talladega to get the he was dubbed Bill Picasso by Apple Arts when he was selected for the Celeb RT dinner and live auction event for his artwork. Peace Bill by the Sea was an auction item. Early on during the COVID pandemic, he shared historical tidbits during J.C. Park's Facebook Live events, which came to be called Bill's Fun Facts. Bill and his wife, Kevin, a former NPRA employee, raised 3 active boys and most recently were promoted to grandparents, welcoming granddaughter B just this past year. While we could go on and on, we know Phil is ready to get the post-banquet social started. So you are encouraged to stick around to hear more great stories from the man himself. Congratulations, Bill Stiles. He wants to you are a fellow award recipient.
Congratulations, Phil. I would invite you to say a few
All right.
words.
Well, thank you. I was very shocked and humbled by the award selection. It's been a privilege to serve the Jefferson City community for almost 36 years. And I know Councilman Wiseman worked for us years ago as a lifeguard, right? And at the ice arena.
Shortly, yes. I wasn't a very good skater.
And I know Councilman Ward's children have worked for us. Councilman Kim, I see you a lot out at the amphitheater at the concerts during the summertime. Councilman Spicer, softball, adult softball. I know Councilman Schreiber's nieces participated, were very active in the skating program for years. And Councilman Hensley participates in Porch Fest annually. And I know all the other council members have participated in some way or form in parks programs. The mayor's heavily involved with community bike rides and Adrian's Island Park. So we appreciate your support throughout the years and hope it continues. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Phil. And I know that we're recognizing you, and you always think of ways to recognize others, because what you've done has had an impact where all of us can enjoy. You could have that same story with every single person in Jefferson City of some connection they have to parks. And in some way, you've been an assistant in helping with that experience. So we're extremely thankful. The video is so joyful and fun, and that's just how you are. It really reflects you as a person, and you bring that to the job. It's like you naturally have that, and you help all of us to enjoy our city more because of it. It's very cool. I mean, we know in Jeff City how great you are, but it's cool to be recognized on a statewide level like that. I know the recognition banquet, the after party that they talked about, was in Springfield. So I appreciate the fact that you can elevate what we're doing here to that statewide audience and show what an important role you play. So we're extremely proud of you. Congratulations, and wish you all the best. We're lucky to have you. So any other comments, questions? Yes, Councilman Spencer.
I just would like to hear a figgle if I could.
Well, the figgle is the laugh. I just shake my shoulders.
Oh, okay. I was looking for I was looking for ibuprofen or something.
Yeah, that's for another time.
Okay. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we'd like to invite you forward. If we could get a picture with council and Councilman Kimna as the Parks and Rec liaison, if you want to come forward. And you can just use your strut like you did on the runway up there on the red carpet and come on up too, Phil. Thank you. And now item B, we would like to recognize Ms. Margie Miller, who is the recent retiring Finance Director of Finance and Information Technology, and we want to wish you all the best. So we'd like to invite you to the podium. And I know last council meeting was actually your last official council meeting, but now you can be here where we can celebrate you and appreciate you coming back. We had a small celebration for you on Friday to wish you the best. And I know then there were a lot of people there, city staff and council and others that came to celebrate and thank you. I want to give you sincere thanks for all the work that you've done in leading through times that our city has never seen before. You led us through a tornado and doing all of that kind of financial aftermath and paperwork that came along with the recovery efforts were no small task. That was something that has never been done in our city's history, and you really led through that without ever hearing one complaint from you. You just really worked hard. Well, Steve, well, no. So, and then right after that, followed by a pandemic. And when you think about all the financial implications of that and all of the extra things that went along with it that I know you never anticipated, but you led through it flawlessly and have also helped us. I know council working through the budget and finance, you've always been a great help to us, and we've been thankful for that. We won countless awards every year that while you've been here, and that is something that would have not occurred without your leadership of such a great department. So we wish you the best. We're thankful to have you, and wish you all the best of luck in your retirement. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Kroll in case he wants to add anything.
Just say thank you as well, and you definitely made a difference in the organization and the community, and thank you for that. We did have a video, but it was 80 hours of pickleball, and I figured that probably wasn't going to go too well. And Sheila Perry is also going to be serving as the interim director. So thank you, Sheila, for stepping in and taking that on. So just thank you on behalf of council and all the citizens and staff as well.
It's been an honor and a privilege to work under you, Mayor, and City Administrator Steve Kroll, and all the city council members, city leadership, and all city staff. It's been a great experience.
Does beg one question though. You tired of retirement yet?
I've only had a day, and I think I'll give it a try.
Thank you, Margie. Does any council members have any comments? Councilman Hensley?
Sure. I guess I'll speak for myself and also for all the past chairmen of the Finance Committee. And thank you very much for your generous devotion of time and patience and wisdom in helping us through a process every year that is streamlined and has been streamlined under your leadership, but could just really be a huge challenge, and just helping us, all the members of the council, learn and understand and process an enormous amount of information in a very short period of time with high confidence. So and then just personally, it's just been a real pleasure to work with them, and congratulations and thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Margie. And we appreciate all of your work and hope that you'll stay in touch. And I hope to see you out on the pickleball court and we'll make that happen. And I'd like to invite you forward so we can get a photo, and maybe if Councilman Hensley is the finance and budget chair, if you'd like to come up front here too with us, and we'll get a picture. Thank you.
Got it.
And item C, we have an update on the upcoming wastewater bond issue, which is on the ballot. I'd like to invite Mr. Bob Gilbert, who is part of the committee. Welcome. Have also Eric Seaman along in case we have anything to add. Welcome.
Thanks. It's an honor to listen and watch you recognize some city staff, and your public works staff is hard at work as well, and been a great partner. Real quick, I guess Bob Gilbert, 5th Ward. No fifth warders. And I'm one of the 3 tri-chairs for the wastewater bond campaign. So with me on the campaign team are Ashley Varner with Hitachi Energy and Ken Hussey, former council member, helping us out a lot in terms of setting up our organization and filing with the Ethics Commission, et cetera. Really just want to provide you with a quick update about how the campaign is going, some of the activity, and see if you have any questions. So I'm going to keep this pretty brief. No photos needed, by the way, at the end. Real quickly, we kind of have a 4-prong approach to the campaign. One has been in-person meetings at different associations and organizations throughout the community. Big thanks to Matt Marash, your Public Works Director, and Eric Seaman, also Wastewater Division Director. They've been assisting the campaign team with answering all the hard questions. As a community, we love to flush it and forget it. But these gents and the team that they have certainly do anything but forget about what's needed on the wastewater system. And so as we continue to invest in that system and try to keep rates affordable, that's what our message has been about. We've been sharing that, I'd say about maybe 10 to close to a dozen different organization meetings that we've been to or going to be in the next couple of weeks. Also, the second, I guess, prong is a direct mailer. I think the council has seen a version of this that's going to be going out. We're going to have 2 mailers between now and the end of the campaign period. So starting next week, we are sending to the residents who voted in the last 3 municipal elections these flyers. Also, the same information from the flyer is also going to be in ads in the News Tribune starting next week. There'll be 2 of those, as well as kind of an overall letter to the editor campaign, which starts from a letter from yours truly. I heard it was going to be Wednesday or Thursday this week. Again, in person, mailer, News Tribune, and letters to the editor has been our strategy so far, and really want to keep carrying the message that this is really about affordable rates. You know, going through a bonding campaign, a bonding option is what keeps our interest rates low and investment continuing in the system with keeping those rates as low as they are. So we continue to communicate great information that the city's provided as far as the percentage of median household income that we pay for our sewer rates, which is extremely low, and we want to keep it that way with the bond. So I'll say it from here, I guess, vote yes on April 5th for the wastewater bond issue. Any questions or
Any
comments from the council?
Mr. Kroll?
Would you like to explain what happens if the vote is not approved? What are some of the consequences of that, or how will that be addressed?
Sure. Basically, and I can certainly turn that over to Eric as well. Essentially, any investment that's made in the system, if the bonds are not approved, essentially have to be either paid for as you go, which means you're waiting for system improvements to occur. And if anybody's kind of paying attention to inflation right now, waiting 10 or 15 years for accumulation of funds certainly is probably going to cost us something more in the future. Secondly, the other thing is if we went any kind of other financing method, private financing is going to be at a greater cost from an interest rate perspective. Another potential thing to probably bring up with your constituents would be any kind of grant or federal funding that's being discussed at a lot of levels at this point. A voter approval for bonding is necessary to be able to get some of those funds. So basically, those federal funds flow through state agencies like the Department of Natural Resources here in Missouri. And we have to have voter approval before you can apply and get low interest loans and grants for those things. So I guess all around, thanks for the question. All around, though, it's going to cost us more if we don't. So that's why we're passionate about passing this here on April 5th. And by the way, it was 12 years ago, the last bond issue that was passed. So it passed very well, but we want to make sure voters know and are informed coming up here April 5th.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Well, we appreciate that and the committee and getting the word out and reminding everybody to vote on April 5th.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks. And item 5, public hearings. We have 2 bills we're going to take up under item A, and that is 2021-87 and 2021-88. So Mrs. Donaldson will read both of those.
2021-87, an ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, changing, amending, and modifying the zoning map of the zoning code of the City of Jefferson by rezoning 5.27 acres located in the 2400 block of Industrial Drive from M2 General Industrial to C2 General Commercial.
Mr. Barron?
Sorry, was that 20 or 87 and 88?
That
Those
was
bills?
87.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
2021-88, an ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, accepting and approving the final subdivision plat of Mel's Cafe subdivision, a subdivision of the City of Jefferson, Missouri.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Barron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And so up on the screen is a location map with the subject property highlighted. It is in the 2400 block of Industrial Drive. The property is currently zoned in M2, a general industrial zoning category. And so the first of the 2 bills, bill number 87, would rezone the property from the current M2 category to a C2, a general commercial zoning designation. The purpose of the rezoning request is to accommodate redevelopment of the property, including future uses, including a restaurant, bar, some auto repair, and some drive-through dry cleaning uses. There's a small portion of property in the bottom left-hand corner of the property, as shown on the screen, that would remain zoned M2. The reason for that is the current particular use for that portion of the property as a automobile towing company is actually better left within the M2 zoning category. Bill number 88 would approve a final subdivision plat for the property. Up on the screen is the final subdivision plat document. The property, which currently consists of 3 separate meets and bounds parcels, would be subdivided into 4 lots as shown up on the screen. Again, the purpose is to accommodate a redevelopment of the property and some new uses there. There's one public improvement plan that's associated with the subdivision plat, a sanitary sewer extension, which would be along the back or the southern portion of the property. And those plans are in an improvable state with the Department of Public Works. This item was reviewed, both of these bills were reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission at their February 10th meeting and recommended for approval on a vote of 8-0. The engineering consultant associated with the project, Mr. Paul Sampson, is in attendance this evening to answer any questions, and I'd be happy to answer any questions prior to opening the public hearing.
Are there any questions? Okay, at this time, we will open the public hearing for anyone here to speak on 2021-87 and 88. So is there anyone here that would like to speak? Mr. Sampson, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Paul Sampson with Central Missouri Professional Services, and I'm here tonight to represent Mr. Brian Mawson, who is the owner of the property, also the owner of Mel's Cafe. Mr. Mawson has recently purchased the property all the way from Mel's Cafe to the east to just west of Wilson Drive, and it includes the former Pop's Lawn and Garden facility as well as industrial supply house on the east side and then the existing Mel's Cafe. With the purchase of the property, Mr. Mawson intends to redevelop the entirety of the property, primarily as a new location for Mel's Cafe and a new drive-through dry cleaning location. The existing Mel's will be remodeled into a bar. The backside of that, as Mr. Barron stated, would be remaining as the automobile towing service, and then the IBT industrial equipment supply on the east end of the property will remain as is. So in order to accommodate that redevelopment plan and have the uses more closely matched with the zoning, we're asking for the rezoning as well as the subdivision plat, which will create 4 separate tracks for each use to have its own separate piece of property. So with that, I'd answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? All right.
Thanks very
Appreciate that.
much.
You're welcome. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak on either bill tonight? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing portion and we'll take up 87 and 88. Are there any questions or comments or deliberation? Okay, so we'll do roll call vote on 87 first. Mrs. Donaldson, roll call, please.
Fitzwater.
Aye.
Hensley.
Aye.
Kimna.
Aye.
Lester.
Aye.
Schreiber.
Aye.
Spencer.
Aye.
Spicer.
Aye.
Vote.
Aye.
Ward. Aye. Wiseman.
Hi.
Bill passes, and now roll call for 2021-88.
Hensley.
Aye.
Kimna.
Aye.
Lester.
Aye.
Schreiber.
Aye.
Spencer.
Aye.
Spicer.
Aye.
Vote.
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Wiseman.
Aye.
Fitzwater.
Aye.
Bill passes. Item 5B, we have Resolution 2021-28.
A resolution of the City of Jefferson, Missouri approving a special exception permit for a small wireless facility on right-of-way located at 818 Montana Street.
Mr. Barron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As the clerk read, this resolution would approve location of a small wireless facility located on public right-of-way. The location is shown up on the screen, highlighted by a pink dot. Its address that we've assigned to it is 818 Montana Street. It's in an area that's currently zoned to RS4, a single-family residential zoning district, a single-family neighborhood in use. The particulars of the tower are shown on the screen. The location would be right at the corner of a street intersection, shown on the screen right there. And then the tower, the actual tower structure is shown on the left-hand side of the screen there. It'd be a 37-foot tall tower, resembling a utility pole, essentially a utility pole with a small cellular array at the very top, or canister at the very top of the tower, and then a box approximately halfway up on the height of the tower to house some of the equipment. The consultant did give us a rendering of what the tower would look like after installation. And so it's a little hard to see because it kind of blends into some of the background, but that is a rendering of it at its location there at the corner of the street intersection. I did distribute a correspondence packet to all the council members and spoke about it in the pre-meeting. There were some questions as to why existing utility poles in the area could not be used at the last council meeting. And the consultant, Mr. Joe Marcus, got a response. And so that's basically the last page within that correspondence packet. There's a response on both towers that are up for your consideration this evening as to why they couldn't be used. Mr. Marcus is in attendance this evening to present these cases and answer any questions. This item was recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission at their February 10th meeting on a vote of 8-0. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have prior to opening the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Councilman Hensley?
Thank you. I'm just curious, how far is the pole from Montana Street? How far is it set off the road?
I don't have an exact measurement. It'd be I don't know if that can be read.
29 feet?
So,
oh,
9.5.
9.5 feet. Okay.
9.5.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. At this time, we'll open the public hearing portion for Resolution 2021-28. Is there anyone that would like to speak on that resolution? Welcome.
My name is Joe Marcus. I'm from Chesterfield, Missouri. I'm with Black and Beach, and we represent AT&T for this matter. Essentially, we're looking at putting in a small cell in this location. The small cell kind of takes the place of putting in large towers. You know, these will run 35, 40 feet, like a normal utility pole will, as opposed to trying to place a 200-foot tower in the middle of the city, which nobody ever wants anyway. So this seems to be a much better way to go. Normally, we would put the small cells on an existing utility pole or an existing light pole. In this particular instance, though, and the one following, the problem was that when we looked there, Ameren came back and said there were no poles in this area that we needed it that would qualify. And their qualifications run about 102 pages. So, I mean, it's an amazing thing. But they said this particular instance, the electric lines were too low on all the utility poles. And so none of the equipment could be loaded on the pole, and they were not able to raise the electric lines or power lines any higher. So it was Ameren then that suggested we went back and chose someplace of our own and put in utility poles. And these poles would be owned by AT&T Telephone. Like I said, I kind of bristle sometimes at calling it a tower because it is a utility pole virtually, and it is what's going in will be an AT&T standard utility pole. When we look for these, place a pole by itself, we look for a place that's hopefully not in front of somebody's house, either it's on a side yard, on a corner like this one is, or split property, vacant property. We're very particular. We throw them out usually if we can't find something that makes some sense and isn't obnoxious to the people who live there. So that's really about it. Is there any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councilwoman Ward?
What's the frequency reach for these cell towers? Like how far is their reception frequency?
Depends, but these will run anywhere from the low end of a quarter of a mile up to a mile in radius.
Councilwoman Ward?
And I guess this is more for Eric. Was there any opposition from this property owner?
We received no comments
just wanted to
on this
confirm.
case in general, and so no, we got no comments from the adjacent property owner.
Okay. And one more question. In neighborhood, this is just thinking in the future. In neighborhoods where we don't have utility poles, where you could use an existing pole for one of these cell towers placement, and everything is underground. How do you, I mean, would you put up a pole in those neighborhoods where?
Yes. Depending on the neighborhood in what it's like, it's a residential neighborhood with everything underground. There are some things we can do with metal poles that make them look a little different than a utility pole. In an area where there are already utility poles there, we do it with the utility pole.
So a metal pole, would you use those in other residential neighborhoods because they're maybe more attractive? I mean.
Yes.
So why wouldn't we do that for neighborhoods, other neighborhoods?
I would say it would stand out more as a general rule because a utility pole is going to look like every other utility pole on the street. It's a 37-foot tall wood pole. And so it's not going to stick out. It's not going to look very, unusual. If it were sitting there by itself, it probably would look unusual as being, a wood pole. And so we would try to do something more decorative in that case.
So what's the diameter of of a metal pole you would use versus?
About the same.
About the same.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilman Lester?
So prior to this, I believe there were a little over a dozen other permits for these installations on existing poles. These two that we're talking about are in older neighborhoods. Are the poles there lower, the lines lower because it's older neighborhoods? Is that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that last part?
Is the lines were said they were too low to accommodate. So I guess the poles are lower. Is that because it's an older neighborhood?
I honestly do not know. Ameren didn't say one way or the other why those were different, but they did tell us that they were, different and unacceptable. So I'm sorry, I really don't know the answer to that.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak on Resolution 2021-28? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing portion and we'll take up that resolution. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion, questions, deliberation? Roll call, please.
Kimna,
Aye.
Lester,
Aye.
Schreiber,
Aye.
Spencer,
Aye.
Spicer,
Aye.
Vogt,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wiseman,
Aye.
Fitzwater,
Aye.
Hensley.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Item C, Resolution 2021-29.
A resolution of the City of Jefferson, Missouri approving a special exception permit for a small wireless facility on a right-of-way located at 917 Jackson Street.
Mr. Barron?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This item is located, as the clerk read, on Jackson Street. The location map is up on the screen. The location of the proposed tower is shown by a pink dot. Up on the screen is the drawings that are associated with this request, the engineering drawing, and also the visual showing the height of the tower. Again, it'd be a 37-foot utility pole style with a canister, small cell canister located on the top, and with a box located about halfway up the height of the tower. It's worth noting that this location for this one is located again on public right-of-way on Jackson Street, which happens to be particularly wide at this location. It narrows down considerably just up the street from there, but it's located at the boundary between two properties, and so on the public right-of-way in front of the boundary between two properties. And I think this visual might show that a little better. You can see the right-of-way is particularly wide, but then notches down, so to speak, into a very narrow right-of-way right at this point, just one lot north of this location. Again, located right at the boundary between two lots, located right here. We have received some comments from a property owner along the frontage. Ithaca Bryant, who is property owner at this house right here. As you can see, their property goes all the way back to include this frontage along Jackson Street. So in the correspondence packet that was distributed to you, there's actually two email chains from Ms. Bryant. The first one within your packet is the more recent one, which was sent to the council over the weekend. I had responded to some of the items within that, and she had responded back, and so the entire chain is located there within the packet. And the second item from Ms. Bryant was actually submitted prior to the planning and zoning case on this item, and so it was actually included within the council packets when this resolution was introduced at the last meeting. As with the last case, the consultant did submit a rendering showing what the proposed tower would look like after installation. This item was considered by the Planning and Zoning Commission at their February 10th meeting. They did recommend approval on a vote of 8-0. Again, the consultant is here to answer any questions you may have, and I'd be happy to answer any questions prior to opening the public hearing.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilman Hensley?
Thank you. So the land that this pole would sit on is just owned by the public rather than being privately owned land to which there's a right-of-way easement or a grant of access through. This is not actually owned by the adjoining landowners, right? This is
correct. This is public right-of-way, street right-of-way, okay. So it's not private property.
Okay, and it looks like this would be 13.5 feet from the edge of Jackson Street. Is there a reason that it needs to be so far from Jackson Street? It seemed like some of the comments that we were getting from people in the area was that it seemed awfully far into the yard there.
I may defer to the consultant who might be better able to answer that.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, Councilwoman Ward.
So to confirm, this is a lot owned by someone, a private lot, but there's a strip of easement down the side of it that.
Incorrect. This is public right of way. It is not
The
private
whole
property.
entire lot?
So, I'll go back to this drawing here. And so everything where the arrow is, that line, everything on this side of it is street right of way, public right of way. Everything on this side of it is private property.
Right.
And so this would be located on the public right of way, the street right of way.
Is there a reason why the public right of way, the city's easement does go? Is it typically back that far?
And so Mr. Marash had stepped out, I think. Actually, it's more typical for right-of-way to be approximately this wide. One of the reasons that Jackson Street is a one-way street is because it narrows down for this short stretch right here. If you'll notice, and it's actually right here at the top of the screen where Jackson Street, the right-of-way widens out again. And so it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 houses there that have their private property closer to the, to the street. that causes that is, I think, the reason why that is so narrow at that point. But the more typical width is as shown in this area.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Is there, and I know we haven't ever discussed this, but is there ever been any plans maybe discussed to make that section 2-lane because of the development we have going on with the new sports complex and all the, additional traffic that will be coming and going in that neighborhood? I'm just asking that because the placement of this, if we were ever to widen it, would that hinder that if that's ever a need?
Go for it.
Yeah, and we have looked at, potential widening sidewalks, et cetera, in the area. The thing about it is located in the right of way, so utilities would have to relocate at our request if it interfered, number one. But certainly the biggest impediment is the properties right near the street. So those would have to be bought out, more than likely demolished. So it's nothing currently in design or anything like that. It's just a, kind of a master plan thought.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, at this time, we will open the public hearing for our resolution 2021-29. Is there anyone that would like to speak on this? Welcome, Mr. Marcus, again.
Yeah, Joe Marcus with Black and Beach, representing AT&T. Yes, in this particular instance, we started looking for a place to put a new pole. And so if we can find a place that has a vacant lot, and this is actually the back end of a backyard here, as opposed to being a separate lot that fronts on Jackson Street. So, in doing so, we found that these two were relatively close to where we needed to be. And we put it right on a dividing line of the property. So that way, if somebody does, for some reason, subdivide and puts in a house, it's not just going to be a pole in front of the front door. It's going to be right on the property line, as it may be. There had been a question about why was it 13-foot back? It's I think that's a 28-foot right of way there, and they moved back in order to get past the sidewalk and also to get past any utilities that are there. Should there not be much in the way of utilities, yeah, it is possible that it could be moved a little bit closer to the street.
Okay,
Questions?
thank you. Any questions, Councilwoman Ward?
In this neighborhood on both the north and south ends, that neighborhood is, is bookended by industrial, institutional, commercial areas. And since the range of these is 1/4 of a mile, did you look to, instead of locating it in the residential area, more to an institutional commercial area?
That was brought up, and particularly about putting it on school property, which is south of there. And we went back and looked at the search area. In other words, they present us with an area from the engineers in which they needed the utility pole placed. In this instance, there wasn't any place close enough that was industrial or owned by a school or whatever in order to put the pole. It would have been outside of the area that would produce a signal that would make the coverage that they were looking for. Because that would be the first place we would look, obviously. I mean, is in a commercial area.
Yeah, it just looked like the school property is just a couple lots south of there. So how can just a few?
It lacked about 120 feet of being there. I mean, I looked that up myself before I came, and because as it sits now, this is on kind of toward the edge of where the ring was, and as you go further down, it gets about 120 feet outside of the ring once you get down on the school property. So this would not be functional.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here that would like to speak on Resolution 2021-29? All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing portion and we will take up that resolution. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Any further discussion or deliberation by council? Roll call, please.
Lester,
Aye.
Schreiber,
Aye.
Spencer,
Aye.
Spicer,
Aye.
Vogt,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wiseman,
Aye.
Fitzwater,
Aye.
Hensley,
Aye.
Kimna.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Item 6, appointments by the mayor. Mrs. Strope.
Okay, we have appointments this evening to the Airport Advisory Committee, Derek Thomas, to the Cultural Arts Commission, Holly Stitt, to the Environmental Quality Commission, Jeannie Jacobic, to the Library Board of Directors, Bob Pretty, to the Public Transit Advisory Committee, Hannah Freevert, and to the USS Jefferson City Submarine Committee, Patrick Bono and Marty Thruston.
Thank you. And I think in the beginning, there's one you might have missed. I know you mentioned with Holly, EQC, you said Holly, so I missed which one, but they're all listed there. So, or maybe not. I think.
Yeah, you were one on, you were saying Holly did the wrong title.
Okay, so Cultural Arts Commission is Holly Stitt. And
Yes.
Environmental Quality Commission is Jeannie Jacobic. Oh, Library Board of Directors, Bob Pretty.
Yes, and I think the rest you had correct.
Okay.
Okay,
Sorry about.
awesome. Any questions on that or a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? A motion passes. As always, we appreciate our board and commission volunteers. Item 7, presentations from staff, consultants, and invited guests. We would like to invite Ms. Rachel Stinzy to give us an update on downtown recycling, a brief update. Thank you. And we also have representatives with us from Republic Services. Welcome.
Good evening. At the last Public Works and Planning meeting, the conversation about downtown recycling and contamination came up. And the conversation led to council needing to make a decision on whether or not we provide the service of recycling in our downtown area. The conversation also led to questions about some of how the processes of Republic Services work in regards to contamination and picking up the recycling. So we did invite Lillian Kennard from Republic Services to give the presentation. So I will turn that over to her.
Hi, good evening, Madam Mayor.
Welcome.
Council members. I want to start before I get into the recycling. I wanted to take a moment and introduce you to our new general manager. Came to us in this position within the last month. His name's Dylan Pearson. And if you'll indulge me for a moment, I'm just going to let him say a few words and introduce himself. And then we'll jump into recycling.
Sure. Hey, great to be here tonight with everyone. Thanks. Again, I'm Dylan Pearson. I actually replaced Andrew Wimpy, who was promoted internally within the company. So he actually works out of our Kansas City office now. So we're sad to see him go, but happy for his family and his ability to move forward. I'll have Lillian pass my contact information on to each and every one of you. So if you ever have any issues or questions that we can assist with, we stand ready to do that. And really looking forward to working alongside you guys moving forward. So any questions of me?
We're glad to have you. Welcome to Jefferson City.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I wanted to start off with just a brief look back at what's happened. Because I see this come up a lot, I think we've had a lot of questions. I've seen a lot of social media questions about it. So I thought it'd be nice to just kind of revisit this just a little bit. So at the beginning of the pandemic, you may recall, back around March 23rd of 2020, we suspended curbside recycling. Everything went trash at that moment, not knowing a lot about the pandemic. We were all still trying to navigate through, unknown territory. We were able to resume curbside recycling services a month later on April 27th. Since then, we have also made another change. Previously, the materials that were picked up curbside were taken to Federal International. They would put it in a truck for us, bail it up, send it to a sorting facility to have the items sorted out. So now, in March of this past year, we have built our own transload facility. You will see the front of this facility where you see the gate. Our trucks back into there. They dump on the tipping floor just as they would over at Federal, same concept. And then we have a gentleman who will load it all into this tractor trailer here. From there, it gets hauled to our material recovery facility in Hazelwood, Missouri. While he's in there going through this, we are trying to pick out just basically a rough sort of materials. So I have a few pictures of contamination here. That happens to be a water hose. You see that we get yard waste. We're getting a lot of bags. We're getting food waste. That's a stereo there. These are things that we are commonly seeing these things repeatedly over and over again. Jefferson City's curbside recycling program takes in an average of roughly 200 tons per month. Of that 200 tons from our rough sort at our facility, we're pulling out 25% to contamination. So 50 tons a month is coming out just from what we pull with that one little skid loader and going into the landfill. That's before it goes to Hazelwood, to our facility, and actually gets hand sorted there. So it is very important that we continue to encourage residents to adopt good recycling habits in order to have a direct impact on sustainability. By doing this, the common things that we are seeing repeatedly over and over again are plastic bags, greasy pizza boxes, soda bottles that still have residue in them. You name it, we see it on there. Clothes, a lot of times people are confusing recycling with reusing. Those are reusable, but they're not within this curbside recycling program. These are more for your common things, your plastic water bottles, your milk jugs, aluminum tin cans, clean cardboard, and paper products. So important when you're speaking with residents, you want to make this program as easy as possible. So quickly know what to throw. If you're in doubt in any item, a lot of residents will go, okay, well, I hope this is recycling, so I'm going to throw it in the bin. And if it's not, they'll just pull it out. A bin that is contaminated contaminates that entire bin. When you get multiples, you end up contaminating an entire load. We fill up, if you think about the 50 tons that we are taking out, that's contamination, that's 5 full trucks a month. If you just packed them full that are contaminated. So know what to throw. When in doubt, just throw it out. Empty, clean, dry. Everything needs to be given a rinse. It needs to be let air dry. Then it can go into your container. You definitely want to put it in there loosely. Don't bag it. Bags cannot be torn apart and sorted. So those will go into a landfill. Any ones that do make it through, they'll jam up the equipment. So it's always best to just leave those out. And that is what we're doing with recycling, and that is the cycle of it. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Well, we appreciate that update. I know that's a good reminder and maybe looking at the education process. I don't know if 25% is close to your other communities, what the basic community average is, or if we're higher than that contamination level or need to focus more on education. Is there a kind of a rough number that most communities you want to be at?
That is, it is a high contamination level. I don't have the exact percentage of where we would like it to be, but that's something that I can get and send over to Rachel and she can distribute over. But it is quite high. To think that 25% is just from a rough sort that we're picking out manually with one guy on a skid loader. So getting through the rest of this, there's a lot that's being pulled out. So I'm sure that it is higher than the 25%.
Sure. And we appreciate that. And I know the single stream is a wonderful method to do that. And we're thankful that we have it in our city for the community to utilize. So in this case, we're looking at the downtown recycling containers, which is a little different from the residential. When we started that program, I know it's things have changed and maybe shifted. So maybe in the future, we could see what direction council gives, that perhaps you could work with Rachel in looking at what the waste stream is in that area, and if those were mostly contaminated or not, because maybe people are walking out with soda cups instead of plastic bottles to recycle. So is it still relevant to do that? And of course, this all came about, for those that don't know, when the trash cans have been cleaned and repainted and needed the extra care, that we were looking at both. So, and honestly, perhaps this could be a project also to utilize the Environmental Quality Commission. I know perhaps Ms. Sinzi on our end, we could talk with that group. This would fit right up their alley. These are projects that they worked on when we did the first trash and recycling program several years ago, and they really took this and were very valuable as a resource. So all those things being said, I guess we need to see, I don't know if we need a decision necessarily tonight or how this is in front of us, but maybe if council wanted to allow or request that you connect on what is our waste stream, and if it is, then how can we make it work, and where do those carts need to be placed to make them at their optimum level of usage, and maybe even utilize the EQC as part of that whole process. Mr. Kroll?
Lillian, could you maybe explain the collection process and the number of trucks? I know sometimes people think that they're seeing the recycling going into with the regular trash dumpsters, trucks.
Yes, absolutely. So we have 5 residential routes that run 5 days a week. That truck will go out and they will pick up recycling at the curb. They will go to the transload facility that you saw in the photo, dump there, then they will go back out and rerun that route for trash.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes, Councilman Lester?
So, it's been a while, but you have sent out mailers before. It's been over a year or so to on those mailers saying what was appropriate for recycling and whatnot. And did you see after that mailing any impact of less contamination, or did you evaluate that?
There's really been no change from what we've seen before. I know the mailer they're referring to is the one that we jointly did with city staff with your recycle education funds that you get every year. So it just really was not much of a difference. And I think a lot of people are getting laxed, even more so in the last year or two.
Councilwoman Ward?
Question regarding pickup. I know in my neighborhood, a lot of times I see overflowing recycling barrels and it's obvious it's not recycling materials. Especially when you see a vacuum cleaner hanging out, or how do your drivers, how are they instructed to handle that? Do they pick it up, their first trip around with trash, or are they instructed when they go around the second time to pick up recycling, just to leave it if it's obvious?
So yes, this came up multiple times. They are instructed to pick recycle containers up as recycle. When somebody sees them pick up a recycle container on a trash route, Steve will get a phone call, Sonny will get a phone call, Rachel will get a phone call, everybody gets a phone call because we have picked up recycling. So in discussions of this before, it would be, what would it take for the city? How much labor would there be involved for the city to police it? Who's going to police it? Who's going to be looking at each container going through? And then what would the steps be to, there are some communities who have adopted ordinances to coincide with, you know, the first time your cart isn't there, it's going to be tagged that please try again. Second time they have contamination in there, they're going to get another warning to pull it out. And then their cart's going to be removed and they lose recycling privileges. So then you now have a customer that pays for a service, even though they're not using it correctly, they pay for a service that they're not receiving. And want to know, you know, then it starts the discussions of, well, what type of a discount am I going to get since I don't get the recycling service, even though it's a bundled package. So that, as far as how in depth the city wants to police it would be definitely, you know, some conversations that we would need to have with staff and just kind of, you know, evaluate the entire process and implications.
Thank you. Any other questions? And on this particular item, so we can see if council is favorable to you having a preliminary discussion about the particular cans. I believe they were not scheduled to be put back in the downtown area, which is the only area that we have kind of that public type of recycling where people can just drop off. I mean, what we've been talking about up to this point has been the residential piece. And some of the businesses do their own recycling. Commercial businesses can recycle on their own. This is more of that public drop off, like our waste cans and recycling containers. And many communities have that service. We tried to bring it in here, starting with the downtown, thinking that it would even go to other commercial areas. So maybe there's an opportunity to grow it, or maybe there's an opportunity that it's not the right fit. But could you help us to give us some data or suggestions of how other communities perhaps do it and make so that council can make an informed decision instead of arbitrary? I mean, if they're asked, of course, recycling is good. Of course, we want to offer it to clientele in the downtown and maybe other business districts too, if this is successful. But could you offer some suggestions so that council could make an informed decision and work with perhaps Rachel Senzi in that discussion, so they, and maybe taking it to EQC if we have some, if there's any type of work that they could do as well?
Yes.
Would that be a good solution?
It would definitely be a good starting point for a conversation to get everything out there and to keep council fully informed of, you know, in order to get from here to here, this has to happen. So
Okay.
yes, we can absolutely look at that and do discussions.
Great. Does council have any other, is that a good direction or any other direction they would prefer to go? Councilman Spencer?
So you said here at the local first step, there's about 25% reclaim of bad product. if you will.
Yes.
So the next phase, what's the percentage of it there?
I don't have that, but I can get that for you.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds like there's a few questions that have been raised tonight. You could help us with some information and we'll continue the discussion. And we're happy to meet you, Dylan, again, and welcome. And thank you, Lillian. I know that anytime we get questions, I often refer them to you. You're very timely in your response and appreciate that you are good at answering questions whenever we have them. So,
Well, thank you. We really enjoy our partnership with the city of Jefferson and everybody that we've had the privilege to work with. And while I still have your attention, as of right now, the Jeff City landfill is back to doing the open house this fall. So
Great.
invitations will go out for that. And we hope that as many of you that can come out and see the transload facility firsthand. And, you know, if there's any time that any of you all would like to come see that, just get a hold of me and I'd be happy to set it up for you.
wonderful. It's very interesting to see if you haven't yet. So appreciate that. And I think it also brings to the forefront for all of us to remember the education piece and how important that is. I know on my signature line for my email, I have several hashtags. One of them is empty, clean, dry, just so that as people get an email down at the bottom, whether they look at that, they might wonder what that means and hopefully just give it a thought and get in that habit. So appreciate anything we can do to help those efforts for our city. And I know the next item on here is announcements, and I know that Mr. Sanders is going to talk about the bulky item pickup, correct? So it kind of is appropriate that you may want to wait at the podium. Do you want to do that announcement now since that's the next item? If you have that kind of teed up?
Sure. Everybody loves the bulky item pickup in the
Yes, they
spring.
do.
So April 4th, that's a Monday, we're going to be doing the west side of the city. That's west of Highway 54. So we ask that everything is out that Monday morning before 5 a.m. That's when they will start picking up the large items. And that's citywide, not just your own day, but citywide. They'll start Monday morning. So it could happen in any daily route. Monday morning, they'll start picking it up. The following week on the 11th is going to be the east side of Highway 54. On our website and in the paper this weekend is a little advertisement talking about what is permitted and what is not permitted. And I question this every year. It's a good opportunity. If you have TVs, y'all are taking TVs. Normally you have to pay $10 or $20 to recycle a TV. So this is a wonderful time to recycle TV and any other large items that are eligible to be recycled.
Thank you. And those items, should they place them in the bin? They leave them out on the curb, correct? None of this goes in the, like when you say TVs, don't put it in your recycle bin.
No. You should keep it off the street, right at the curb is, I think, where your folks like that.
Yes.
And not too early, as Rachel says. So
Yes, do it that weekend.
don't put it out
It's a
tonight.
code violation to leave it out there, but this is an exception. So you can probably start Friday when you get off work and start cleaning the house and bringing it out, but don't do it a week or 2 weeks ahead of time. Your neighbors do not like that.
Wonderful.
Thank
Well, I know that's part of the agreement that we have with Republic Services, and that's something people do look forward to every year. And it keeps items out of creeks and other places that people may dump them. So it keeps our city cleaner in the long run, and people do tend to enjoy that. So enjoy the.
He really enjoys it. He gets out there and picks up with them last year.
Great. Wonderful. Well, any questions before we let our guests from Republic go? Okay. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. You're welcome. And on to our announcements by mayor, council, and staff. We have our 4 standing committees, so we'll run through each one. For announcements, administration, Councilwoman Wiseman.
Yes, our next meeting is scheduled to be April 6th, 7:30.
Okay, thank you. And finance, Councilman Hensley.
Thanks. Yeah, we will not have a finance committee meeting this Thursday. I would suggest to the council that we add another ARPA discussion session to our next regular council meeting, be April 4th, much the same way we did it the first time, with additional public comment opportunity and staff presentation of recommended projects and overview of some general funding categories, and any other topics that are ARPA related and are germane to the discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Public Safety, Councilman Schreiber.
Yes, Madam Mayor, our next public safety meeting will be on Thursday, the 31st at 7:30 a.m. in the police training room.
Thank you. And Public Works and Planning, Councilman Fitzwater.
We have already met for March. We'll be meeting again in April, I think, second Thursday.
Okay, thank you. I'll give my announcements. I wanted to mention that the community bike ride is this Saturday, March 26th at 10:30 a.m. And you can find information on that at the JC Parks website and also on their Facebook page. So please come out and join me on Saturday. And I also want to mention, I know that Mr. Kroll already introduced Sheila Perry, who is here as our interim finance director. We appreciate having you here. You are a very familiar face. You've been here for 13 years. So we appreciate you assisting us in that role and are happy to have you. So everybody already knows Sheila, but wanted to certainly recognize you in that capacity. So thank you. Are there any other council announcements this evening? Okay, and I'll turn it over, item B, to Mr. Sanders for another announcement.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I've made this announcement maybe 3 times at a council meeting now. The snow kind of messed us up. But our ad hoc building code review steering committee is having their final meeting. It's scheduled for this Thursday, the 24th, across the hall in the Boone Bancroft building at 3:30. After their steering committee meeting, there will be an open house, which members of the public can come and ask any specific questions they have about what's going on with the set of building codes and amendments that they have put together that will be forwarded to the Public Works and Planning Committee with their recommendation to approve. And of course, there'll be opportunity there at that Public Works and Planning Committee and the City Council to ask questions and voice your opinion. But we ask that you do it soon, and this would be a good opportunity to do it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Sanders. Item 9, we don't have a Lincoln update this evening. Item 10, presentations from the gallery on specific bills or resolutions. And these individuals are limited to 5 minutes. Most have signed up, but I'll make sure that we didn't miss anyone who may be either online or in person that was unable to sign up. But we will, it looks like all of those who have signed up are for Bill 2021-93, which is about the Capitol Avenue demolitions and acquisitions. So I know that we will be taking the testimony first, and then the bill is under bills introduced. So I know I've had a few questions about it, so I did want to make a couple of answers preemptively that it's introduced, so it won't actually be voted on at this council meeting. Bills introduced are brought up again at the next council meeting on April 4th. So just putting that out there since I've had that asked of me a few times today. And then also, while it is for demolitions and acquisitions, that the acquisition, this is authorizing the supplemental appropriations, so the funds to acquire the properties. And acquisition is a requirement whether the properties are demoed or rehabbed. And so there are a couple of properties already in this that are likely going to be rehabbed if that's possible. So not all of them are demoed. And perhaps depending on if there were developers or interest parties who have gotten now wind of this that may make an offer, then, who knows if that could change some of this or not. Certainly some of them are beyond repair, and we realize that. But either way, some of these steps would have to take place regardless, and there are a series of steps. So it's a complicated, perhaps, item to discuss, but I wanted to say that since those were a few questions that may affect some of the outcome of comments as well. And when we get to the bill, Mr. Molman will give us the actual summary of that bill. So with that, we'll start with, we have Donna Dietz signed up first. So we'll welcome you, Mrs. Dietz, on Bill 2021-93. Welcome.
Mayor Turgeon, City Council representatives, my name is Donna Dietz, and I'm standing before you as both a developer and rehabber of historic properties, as president of Historic City of Jefferson, and most importantly, as the chairperson of the city's Historic Preservation Commission. I'm here to address Bill 2021 regarding the monies allocated for the demolition and the acquisition of buildings on Capitol Avenue. First, I appreciate Councilman Fitzwater's proactive stance to make sure that there's money there for possible demolition and certainly for the acquisition of the buildings that are already on the housing authorities list. However, I think the assumption that these buildings can't be saved is totally unacceptable. And I can give you very specific examples in this thinking. When we bought our 4 buildings in the 700 block of East High, several issues were very similar. First, on these 4 buildings, they were bringing in less than $400 in property tax. One of the buildings was being used to kind of house homeless characters that had moved in. They were demolishing the floors, excuse me, with garbage and graffiti. They were tearing into the walls and such. The other 3 buildings were part of Dr. Fuchs's veterinary practice. And the 2 buildings on both sides of his clinic were actually being used as kennels. So you can imagine what those buildings looked like on the inside and out. Additionally, folks in the neighborhood had actually gone to taking their trash and dumping them in each of these buildings. So when we started working on it, we actually used 2 of Republic Services' giant dumpsters to clean the trash out of the buildings. None of these buildings had been occupied except for folks breaking in for over 25 years. If the city had been issuing dangerous building citations on a regular basis at that time, all 4 of them would be qualified. And we do know what it's like to have a dangerous building. One of those, the veterinary clinic, when my 95-pound assistant walked in there, she literally fell through the floor and fell into one of the kennels. We spent lots of time, labor, and yes, money rehabbing those buildings and recreating that part of the neighborhood. In fact, we even had to create our own trolley square subdivision in order to get our garage built because there were 2 different lots there. Those buildings now house an Airbnb that's creating lodging tax for the city. It houses other businesses. We've created a home for the Governor's Mansion Foundation, and It's a place where we actually live. It increased the property tax in that area for those 4 buildings to over $4,000. It's also enhanced and encouraged other people to enhance their properties, the apartments next door and the houses across the street. It's really taking that in mind that I encourage you to think about how this bill is being addressed and demolition of buildings on Capitol Avenue. I personally know of 5 families and 2 businesses that were hoping to purchase one of the buildings from the Housing Authority, but they were waiting for the process to go through the channels that the city had outlined. They need to have that opportunity. As chair of the Historic Preservation Commission and one of hundreds of citizens and business owners who worked on the historic preservation plan that this city council adopted a very short time ago, I need to point out that part of that plan was to aid in the development and rehab of Capitol Avenue and those historic buildings. Indeed, if this $575,000 had been allocated 4 years ago when we started this process, we probably wouldn't be looking at having to demolish any of those buildings because we wouldn't have had the tornado, we wouldn't have had the blight that's going on there. I'd also like to point out that the dangerous business ordinance itself says the purpose of the ordinance is to provide a just, equitable, and practical method for repairing, vacation, or demolition of buildings and structures that may endanger life and the general public. I'm here to encourage you to make this not a demolition bill, but rather an acquisition bill, and to amend the bill to make it for acquiring all the buildings that Mrs. Fisher owns and hasn't kept up, and then appropriately market them and sell them to the developers who have waited to help save our history and to save these buildings themselves. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Next, we have Anne Green. Welcome.
Excuse me while I get my testimony here. I apologize. It was here as I was walking up. Easy to say. All right. Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Anne Green, and I am the Executive Director of the Historic City of Jefferson, otherwise known as HCJ. HCJ is a nonprofit organization focused on historic preservation efforts in our city, but we do much more than that. HCJ was founded in 1983. At that time, an informal group of local historic preservationists were trying to work with the city council to save the old jail, which was located right in front of the current city jail. The old jail was built in 1842 and was one of the oldest buildings in Missouri at that point in time. This building was important to our city's history as well as our state's history and needed to be saved. To do so, local individuals developed proposals to lease the building and pledged private funds to save it. On February 1st, 1982 at 10:30 p.m., the city council adjourned, but preservationists felt confident that they had succeeded in proposing a viable plan that would save the building while also accomplishing the city's goals. Unfortunately, at 6:30 a.m. the very next day, bulldozers started demolishing the jail, and in a matter of minutes, the building and all the history it encapsulated was gone. I don't know how many of you here remember that or lived in Jefferson City at that time, but those that do, it stood out in their minds and still stays to this day. Based on this history, I'm sure you can understand why people in our community get concerned when the city begins talking about demolishing historic buildings. Historic preservation is a fundamental tool that our city council should utilize for strengthening our community. It has been proven to be an effective tool for a broad range of public goals, including small business incubation, sustainable development, neighborhood stabilization, job creation, heritage tourism, and economic development. On behalf of the historic city of Jefferson, we are asking the city council to grant 3 to 6 months for developers to be found for all of these properties on Capitol Avenue and letters of intent to be presented. We know that there are people who want to wait to save these properties and develop them. I spoke to one such person earlier this afternoon, and I know others have spoke to other individuals as well. I understand that some buildings might be beyond restoration. From all appearances and all information available at this point in time, that is not the case with the buildings on Capitol Avenue. Demolishing these buildings would be an irreversible blow to our city's history. Anyone that truly loves our historic community could not in good faith say that this is the best choice for our community. Spending hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars to demolish historic properties that developers want is not the way forward for Jefferson City. Erasing our history is not the way forward for Jefferson City. We have been fighting to preserve Jefferson City's unique history for almost 40 years. We hope, instead of destroying that history, you will join with us and work to preserve it and say that these places matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, Mrs. Green. Okay, thank you. And next we have Tyler Woods. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm a little taller than the rest of them. I could probably go on for a little bit longer than 5 minutes about the properties on Capitol Avenue that are in question tonight. And I've taken a unique position here. I don't know many other people who have been in every single one of these buildings in the room tonight other than myself. And I've been in these buildings for many, many years. You know, as inside as you can get when their floors are falling through, et cetera. I would encourage the demolition of the majority of these buildings tonight. If it were to get to a vote soon while this council is together before a new election and possible new council members. The biggest concern that I've noted is public safety. There's one building in particular that our police department is not safe going through, let alone if there would be a fire in the middle of the night. The buildings are so full of debris, trash, furniture. I mean, it would take more than 2 dumpsters probably per building to get everything out of them. The same building in question that portions of it are not safe for the police department to go through has embalming fluid spilled all over the floor. There's mold growing so badly that if you're in there for 15 minutes, you're going to be sick for 2 days. It's kind of an emotional subject for me, but they are beyond repair. Many of them are. It's taken a long time to get here. Probably 30 years of these buildings being abandoned. Animals, people, trash. I mean, just you name it, the weather elements, caving in roofs. They are unspeakable. I think that you have a city staff of experts that know the dangers of them. And I think that they've done a decent job assessing that. As much as I used to join in the battles for the property owner to keep the stakes and the posters out of the yards. But I think if it would have been done 20 years ago, you would have had savable buildings. But I think now you're at a junction to where, I mean, there may be one building on Jackson Street, I think it's 114 Jackson, that has a chance if something's done quickly. But if you keep prolonging it, it's just going to get worse. The most recent building I was in and working in, you know, we requested a couple times that officers come clear it. It's impossible for them. So it puts you in a unique situation that, do you feel comfortable working in a building where you're pretty sure there's people that shouldn't be there in the basement? They could have needles, they could have weapons, they could have, you know, you don't really know what. And it's unfair to put the police department and the officers in that danger of clearing those buildings. It's not safe. It's the biggest thing at all. They're not safe. And if you light a fire in the middle of one of those buildings and you get a firefighter in there and you know, they're trapped, they're not going to get out. All the egresses, every single egress in these properties are blocked right now. If you keep prolonging it, you haven't had a major catastrophe with them yet, but the longer you kick the can down the road, it increases that risk. So it's taken me a long time to come to this, and it's a tough thing to be up here, but I thought it would be very important from my point of view as being someone who has been in there in the fight. And sometimes you just got to know when the fight's over with it. So I appreciate your consideration. I would, as someone, again, I would listen to the experts at the city. They're trained on this. They're educated. They know what they're seeing. The engineers know. The police, the fire department, they know they're not safe. Make a decision that would be keeping them going home at night and would not put them in their harm that's unnecessary if you have the position to change it.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Oh, I'm sorry, there is a question. Or no?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Question for Sunny. I know you hear from me all the time regarding boarding these up and, making sure they're buttoned up and tightened up. Currently, they are. So we shouldn't have anybody entering them, correct?
Correct, we shouldn't, but
Right.
they do break in quite often, and the police and Dave could probably tell you how frequently they have to go back and clear the buildings and board them back up.
So when we board them up, is it plywood that we're screwing in and
We
They
use
do-
special screws to screw in plywood,
they're
yes.
still getting through?
Yes, they will take a pocket knife or pen knife and they will sit there and whittle away the wood. They have nothing but time.
Thank you.
But then you go back in and board it up and tax bill the property owner.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Next, we have Mr. Steve Viley. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. Thanks for listening to our comments about this bill. I am here to talk about 2021-93. And I'm a property owner in Jefferson City. I've been dealing with historic buildings for quite a number of years. Have a business right there on East Capitol, 512 East Capitol. Been there for 38 years and have sadly watched the deterioration of East Capitol through all those years. It's been a sad thing to watch. And then, of course, Mother Nature dealt the blow to us in 2019. My building in particular was, well, many of them, of course, were damaged. We lost an entire wall, our east wall, from top to bottom was torn away. But we were able to, while you could look at that building and say that's not going to be salvageable, it was salvageable. We were able to get that back in shape. It took some time, took some effort, took some money. And that's the thing about a lot of these, and we're back in there now and working. And that's the thing about a lot of these buildings that look like they're too far gone. And there are people in the community and other places who value these historic properties and believe that they can be turned around. And you're seeing that right now with Ivy Terrace, for instance, and the Marmaduke House, where the Convention and Visitors Bureau was a disaster. I mean, it was ready to fall in. I remember touring that before it was fixed, and water coming down and kiddie pools to catch rainwater on the second floor. So you can do things that sometimes seem like a miracle, but if there's a will, there's a way, and of course it takes money. That's for sure, no doubt about that. So, but I wanted to thank you first of all because the mayor and the council you've taken an approach that I think has been very good for East Capitol Avenue, trying to save the historic properties, redoing the sidewalks and the lighting, and then adjusting as we had to after the tornado. So the attitude of the council and the mayor for the last several years has been great, working with the housing authority, and I applaud you for that. I was a little concerned when I read about this in the paper and began to hear scuttlebutt on the street about this particular bill. And I sent each of you an email today. You may have received it. And I'd like to modify that just a little bit because I understand this bill, as the mayor just mentioned, is for acquisition and perhaps demolition. So acquisition, yes, we need to get a hold of these buildings and be able to control them, securing them, making sure that folks can't get into them, that rainwater can't get in through through the open windows, that we're trying to secure them in the best way we can. I think those are great things. So applaud that effort, and I would encourage you to do what you can to acquire and to secure. Now, as far as the demolition part, we believe there are people who are going to be interested in acquiring some of these properties and transforming them. And some of them, perhaps, that's not going to be possible. When I think of the house on Chestnut Street that's been falling in for several years, it's amazing to me that that one is still standing. And perhaps that'll have to happen on some of the others. But I would urge you to take the time, allow time. They've been this way for a long time. We're talking 25, 30 years that they've been going downhill. And now you're finally going to be able to get control of them. That's good news. Please allow time for interested developers to come in, to take a look, to see if they can put a plan together that you might find acceptable, and to try to save as many of these historic buildings as we possibly can. East Capitol Avenue is a great place. It's the historic street of our capital city, and we've lost so much. Let's do what we can to keep what we can and to keep that historic structure and that historic fabric to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, it's always good to have a former councilman come and address us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next we have, is this looks like BR, can't make this out, Brett, is this? Last name starts with O'Brien maybe? And the last name maybe is with an R? Richmond, Brian, BRA. Did anyone else sign up? Sorry. I'm sorry, I can't read this name. Now I also have DJ Drury, but I can make that one out. But this looks like did anyone sign up after Steve? I don't want to miss anyone. Maybe they left. Oh. Okay, yes. Okay, yes, welcome. Yeah, you're welcome to come up and speak. And if you, okay, that's okay. This is for all bills. So if you want to let us know when you come to the podium, and I apologize that I couldn't read that, but just state your name and which bill, and welcome.
School teachers would be ashamed of my handwriting over the years. It has gotten very bad. And first of all, I want to thank each of you for being here. It is very difficult
Oh, if you
work
want
that
to,
you do
perfect, speak into
sometimes.
the mic. And then could you give us your name too?
Yes, my name is Becky Richards. and
Becky
I
Richards,
I
perfect.
reside
Thank you.
at 122 West Circle Drive.
Thank
And
you.
that's one of the items on is about the parking in front of our home. And I have had the pleasure of speaking with Councilman Lester, and I thank him for his time and his personal review of the area in front of our home. So I appreciate that. I understand that there were some meetings in February. We did receive some letters. Unfortunately, it wasn't in time for my work schedule for me to be able to attend those meetings. I am a registered nurse at St. Mary's, and I work 7 in the morning to 7:30, sometimes 8 o'clock at night, sometimes 11:30 at night. So was not able to attend those on such short notice. Never at any time has anyone spoken to my husband or I about there being a safety issue about the parking in front of our home. Had we known about people's concern, we certainly would have altered the parking of the van that seems to be in question, which belongs to our daughter and son-in-law that have 5 children. She homeschools her children. And since that was made known to us, that no one has been parked in that area since then. We want to be good neighbors. We don't certainly want to contribute to any safety concerns whatsoever. But I am growing in years and I have very bad knees. I go to an orthopedic specialist in St. Louis every 3 months or sometimes every 6 weeks to have my knees injected. My stepmother, who lived in the home since 1968, is now 96. She still drives safely. She just passed her driver's test. And when she drives with me, she tells me where to turn and what lane to be in because I'm going to have to turn here. She's quite astute. But when she comes to visit, You know, the only health problem she has is terrible arthritis, and she does walk with a cane. And I would hate for her not to be able to park in front of the home that she lived in for over 50 years. And I would hate for me to be in a situation where it would be a difficulty for me to get in and out of my own home. So again, I certainly don't want to contribute to any safety concerns whatsoever. The van has been moved and has not been parked there since we received the letters from the city. Mr. Lester and I spoke the other day, and he said that he had been by a week or so ago and had noticed that there was no one parking there. And I would just plead with the council to please not paint the curb, not decrease our property value by painting the curb and putting a sign in front of our home. Thank you for your time, and any questions?
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Sorry about my handwriting.
That's okay. No problem. Thanks, Becky. And next we have DJ Drury. Welcome.
Welcome, Madam Mayor, Council. Apologize, I'm a little nervous. I don't do public speaking except on my own properties very often. Again, my name is DJ Drury. I own the winery in Holt Summit. We own Stockman Stoneworks in Jefferson City, technically Cole County. But to speak on the Capitol Avenue improvement projects, quick little backstory. My partner and I've lived here for 18 years now. I have watched downtown flourish. In that time frame, it's the sidewalks, it's the bridges. We are very social people. The towns that we go to are the downtown district in Kansas City, Excelsior Springs, let's see, Boonville, Herman. All these downtown areas are thriving. People are yearning for this style and this uniqueness. Just recently, we came across a building at 208 Marshall Street, and I'm working with Randy Allen and several people in town. The extensiveness of some of the projects I understand some people are scared of. When you have the right resources, there's no reason to be scared. There's money to be made in tourism to promote in this town. This project is going to be about $2.7 million. We have Hawthorne Bank funding. We are ready to go on this project. We are starting next week. A building that was damaged by the tornado that was going to come in with one person's envision of air conditioner units, street parking, none of that is in play here. If you find the right people to take care of them, they will do these projects for you. Forgive me, I'm not overly keen on the historic part of it. I'm about the nostalgia and the money to be made in this. From an investor standpoint, I will 100% agree with Ms. Dietz. You've got the people that are willing to do it. Why not entertain it? Save some of that demolition money, put it in towards helping them redo the projects. At about 2:30 this afternoon, when I found out about this meeting, I loaded up my Suburban with about 7 people, and we drove around to each individual property. There's 6 of them I would take right now. So there is no need to tear these things down. Let them make the educated decision, not questioning your authorities, not questioning your professionals that looked at those parts, but the people that are going to spend the hard-earned money to do it, let them have the opportunity. Again, Jeff City is amazing. I've been here 18 years. And the entrepreneurship in this town, people want that chance. And as I think, forgive me for not remembering her name, the lady in the black, let the people try. Give them that educated time frame. And again, to your contrary, hold them accountable. If it's 2 years, that's their time frame, hold them accountable to that. And when it doesn't, take the thing back. Whatever that system may be, and just make sure selection process is a little bit more rigorous, but give us a chance. We want them. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilman Spencer?
Yes.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah.
Would you mind sharing this with us? What properties you have of interest?
Can I get my phone and tell you the property number?
Sure.
I can quote them off some of it. It's one on Adams, anything around the funeral home. I'm happy to elaborate on that if you'd like more details.
If there's an opportunity for you to just maybe email us or something. the
Absolutely.
exact Addresses, that'd be helpful.
Absolutely. The building that we just purchased on Marshall Street. I think I've actually talked to Carrie once about that. There was a White House there they tore down. We need additional parking for that building. We would happily purchase that lot again tomorrow if that opportunity was available, but I don't think that's on this list of current rounds. So there was 2 on Adams, the funeral home, then I think it was the 514, 517. Again, I can email you with the specifics, but forgive me for not having that.
That'd be fine.
Okay.
Thank you for doing that.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. You too. That is everybody we have signed up, but I want to make sure I didn't miss, Holly Stitt, yes. I forgot you had mentioned that you were going to speak and I forgot to add you. My apologies, but you're welcome to come forward. Holly Stitt. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Holly Stitt. I'm the owner of Stitt Barney LLC. I own 6 buildings and 6 parcels of land on Capitol Avenue. I'm by far the largest developer on Capitol Avenue at this point in time. We moved here, my husband and I, in 1999 for an employment job. The company was sold in 2011. We looked for several different places to move to because we have no familial ties here. And instead, we decided that this town had a lot going for it and a place that we wanted to invest in. So we did. And we invested over $1 million in the Capitol Avenue and its revitalization. We lost almost everything we owned in the tornado. And we turned around and are reinvesting in Capitol Avenue. And we are doing that. And we will have over several $1 million in Capitol Avenue by the time we're done. We need to give people a chance for these properties. We haven't had a chance to market them to anybody. We haven't had a chance to do anything. I picked up 501, 507, 511, and 513 on Capitol Avenue to try to revitalize more because my properties are in Plat land at the moment. We're working on that. But we need to get these in the thing. And I can tell you, I keep hearing the argument that these properties are not worth it. My Marshall Street property, which was the only building I had left after the tornado that was worth salvaging, had nothing but the shell, the floors, and the staircase. I replaced the rafters, the roof, the electric from the poles, the plumbing, water, sewer lines, as well as a 2-story back and all the windows. And I walked away. I sold it last fall and walked away well more than I put in it. 513 appraised last fall for far more than I put in it, and it is now occupied on Capitol Avenue. 501 and 507 were similar condition to the houses on the 400 block. They all have leaking roofs, water coming in. 501 has so much termite damage, it's affected all of the floor joists that I have to replace. The back deck was falling off 507, causing a dangerous building. It had so much garbage in it. Ceilings are falling in, the walls are delaminating. 501 and 507, again appraised this fall when they are refurbished to be more than all of my quotes and budgets to put back in and make them revitalized. It is possible to do. Let's talk about the economic impact on the tax base for here. Buildings bring in more than flat land. Currently, the estimations on her buildings bring in $9,231 a year. You take that to flat land, it drops to $1,370. That's a loss of $7,861 annually in your tax base. Approximately 365 years to recoup $500,000 because 75 would be used for acquisitions. The redevelopment of the current buildings are almost, if you redevelop them, they're almost double that amount. A single building unit, if you make it flat, and a single building unit would not be as much as 7 buildings on that property of the 400 if you demolish it. And that's based on what my tax base was on the HQ complex before the tornado. A nonprofit or a church, either one, I get asked about them all the time, would be no tax base whatsoever to our community. Last but not least, a good chunk of these properties have such unique architecture and what makes Capitol Avenue so special. This is the road that leads from our Capitol to the MSP, the 2 main draws of this town. Why on earth would we want to remove what makes it so special? We've gone through all this work for the revitalization of this avenue just to demolish them in the final inning. How does that work? I'm asking you to show me that my initial thoughts of investment in this town were worth it. Show me that we can keep Capitol Avenue special. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Any questions? And congratulations on your appointment to the Arts Commission, by the way. Thank you. That is everybody on our list. Did I miss anybody on the list? Okay. And I wonder if council would be okay. We just have like three bills, but could we take up? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Welcome.
Sorry, I was late, so I didn't get on the list, and I was confused about the whole on the list thing. So,
That's okay.
my
Welcome.
name is Amanda Burke Williams. I reside at 103 Jackson Street, which is the Standish House. You can see I brought my family here with us today. We live right across the street from the area that's proposed for demolition. We walk by these houses every day. We never once feel unsafe, not once. We don't worry about anything falling on our heads. We don't worry about anybody coming out of the buildings. If we see somebody trying to break in, we call the police. That's what you do as a good neighbor. We're so excited to live in this neighborhood and watch it come back and have the opportunity to be the first people to come back to this area. We love our neighborhood so much. And we thank the city so much for taking these properties back and making them available to people like me and my family to live here. I love historic properties. I love where I live. I tell people all the time about the work that we are doing here in Jeff City. I said, people come and they say, well, we've just got all these vacant properties in our town and nobody's doing anything about it. I said, have you seen what they're doing in Jeff City? They're taking those properties back. They're opening them up. They're making them available for the public to buy them and redevelop them. And they're like, how do I do that? I want to do that. I'm so thankful for the opportunity the city's brought to us. I'm not originally from Jeff City, but my whole family has moved to this region because of the work that we're doing. That house has brought my family together. We all worked on it together. Saturdays, day in, day out. You can check our blog, outstandishpreservation.weebly.com, and check us out and see all the hard work that we did. We're still working on it. We hope to be finishing the brickwork very soon, and then we'll be done. It has been a great journey, but we don't have any extra resources. We are just normal people. My husband and I are both state workers. We don't have any extra resources that anybody else has. We have a bank loan, and we took it out on this property, and we took a chance. So please protect our neighborhood that we bought into and keep it the way that it is in order to allow people the time to fix up these properties. Now, I'm not saying every property on that block is fit to be rehabbed, and I'm not saying that all of them aren't. I'm saying that I think we should trust our experts and also let people have the opportunity to reinvest in these properties if they are so interested. We've heard from many people today who are interested in reinvesting in these properties. We had a rough time, but if there were properties that were going to be demolished, we might be interested in another one, but we haven't had the opportunity to be interested in those and express our interest. So, thank you for the hard work that you do, and please continue to protect our neighborhood, preserve our historic properties so that we can walk by every day with our children. We walk down in front of this block and walk downtown and enjoy the view. And we watch the seasons change and all the trees. Just right now, we're about to have beautiful spring. It's a wonderful time of year. And I thank you guys for that opportunity. Please don't take that away from us. And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Amanda. We are so lucky to have you in the neighborhood. Your blog is amazing. The documentation you did through that entire rehab. Thank you for taking the time to share your experience with others and how you rehab the property. I remember being there with several others when you received the historic designation, the landmark award last summer, and you have really kind of been the pioneers moving back in there, being the first, and having a family like yours. We're very fortunate. Any questions? And I was going to say, if it would be agreeable to council, even though it's only introduced, so taking it up is simply the introduction, but if we could maybe take that up now so that some of the babies here in the audience could get home and get to bed before it's too far past their bedtime. Would council be agreeable to taking that up now? There be any objection? I don't see any objections, so why don't we take up 2021-93 under bills introduced?
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, amending the fiscal year 2022 budget of the City of Jefferson, Missouri by appropriating additional funds within the general fund.
Okay, and Mr. Molman.
Thank you. This bill would make a supplemental appropriation for $575,000. The money would be placed in a new line item account to address Capital Avenue demolitions and acquisitions. A couple of different things that this money would be used for. Kind of first, most prominently, the following buildings have gone through the dangerous building process and have been identified as dangerous nuisance buildings. And under the dangerous building code, because the anticipated costs of repair exceeds more than 50% of the fair market value, the city code requires that those buildings be demolished. Those buildings include 109 Adams, 113 Adams, 104 East Capitol, 407 East Capitol, 409 East Capitol, 413 East Capitol, 419 East Capitol, 410 East Capitol, 517 East Capitol, 104 Jackson, 108 Jackson, and 415 Commercial Way. Two of the buildings have been identified as being appropriately repaired, not demolished. That includes 429 East Capitol, which is the old funeral home, and then 114 Jackson Street, also a building where it has not been identified as the repairs being more than 50% of the value. So this money would cover repairs. PBS would be able to get into more detail of what those repairs would be. Additionally, this money would set aside the city's obligations to the Housing Authority under the blight removal reimbursement agreement that was signed back in 2017. So under that agreement, the Housing Authority acquires properties through the eminent domain process, and then the city has agreed to reimburse the Housing Authority for its cost of acquisition. So this money would be, this bill would set aside money to take care of those contractual obligations upon a disposition of those properties from the Housing Authority. We have scoped out a potential work. It's most clearly identifiable in the map that was attached to the bill. So essentially, it would bid it in essentially two phases. The first phase would include all of the buildings that are along Capitol Avenue in the yellow and orange. So that would be the primary alternative. And a secondary alternative would exclude the buildings that are currently owned by the Housing Authority, which they have recently taken title by paying in the money to the court in an eminent domain action. Two of the properties, 104 East Jackson and 108, not 104 and 108 Jackson, not East Jackson, have been identified as projects that can be paid for with federal funds. So those would have to go through a separate contracting process in order to fulfill the obligations for expenditure of federal funds. And then once again, the properties in green have been identified for repair. So that is the kind of basic overview of the ordinance and what essentially the mechanism of the ordinance is to appropriate the money. The intended use of the money is outlined in the summary and in the attachments. City staff has given out this document to the city council. I have a couple of copies here if anyone else needs one, but this kind of identifies the current condition of these properties that were discussed in this bill. So I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any Council questions? Councilwoman Ward?
I just need some clarification regarding the difference between the yellow and the orange. So the orange ones, you mentioned that the Housing Authority does own?
It's so for what I can tell from the online court records, it looks like there has been an order to pay in the award to the court for the eminent domain action.
I did see that.
That's what that means is once that is paid in, then there's been a technical transfer of title. They'll clean that up and do the appropriate title work at the court, but essentially that is a landmark in the court case that says, okay, now this belongs to the Housing Authority.
So if
Kind of a point of no return.
So if the Housing Authority is in ownership of those,
Right.
Could any individual in our community contact them and to purchase them?
Yeah, so the Housing Authority is required to go through a competitive bid process. That's what we've been seeing over the past 3 or 4 years as they acquire property. So it's not like, hey, I'm interested, can you sell it to me directly? They have to go through a competitive process. So so the answer to your question is yes, but it's a little bit more detailed than that.
Right. They're doing that competitive bid process as owners of them, not after we take possession.
Correct. So the way it is worked thus far is that the Housing Authority, which is separate from the city, it's a separate political subdivision, takes title to the condemned properties, and then they will go through essentially a bid process, an RFP process, and then assuming that they get proposals, they will select a proposal, and then they're into a redevelopment agreement with the winning bidder. Once it is disposed and it's sold to the property owner, the city is then obligated to pay back the Housing Authority for the cost of acquisition, which includes things like legal fees, inspection fees, maintenance during the pendency of the sale, appraisers' fees, the special condemnation commissioner's fees. So it's not just the cost of acquisition, and in fact, in many cases, the soft costs of acquisition are more than the fair market value that's paid in.
So we have given them the direction to follow this process up until now.
Yeah.
So it's my thought process that we wouldn't even be worrying about at this point buying 413, 419, or 517 because we'd be waiting for the Housing Authority to start their bid process once they get title, correct?
Right. And so that is a possibility that we could do. And that would be following the previous practice. And so what we've been engaged with the Housing Authority is discussion. Is there any changes to that practice? And the thought is while we were getting prices for the demolition of these dangerous buildings, we might as well go ahead and as a separate alternative, get prices for those as well, so we know what we're working with. So that way when we're discussing, okay, how do we want to handle this phase 3 acquisition, we know one of the potential outcomes could be demolition. Well, let's have some real numbers that we can intelligently talk about.
But we as a council haven't voted to abandon the process that's been working currently.
There has been some votes there has been a vote to approach the Housing Authority about acquisition. So which would be a direct acquisition by the city from the Housing Authority would be different than what has happened in the past.
So the proposed bill currently has a total amount of 575.
Correct.
Do we know how much that 575 is being proposed for demo and how much is being proposed for acquisition?
Sorry, I'm going to give you some rough numbers, but I think fairly accurate. I believe that the number that could be attributed to the blight clearance removal agreement, our obligations under that is about $80,000 to $90,000
For the acquisition?
For the house, it's the reimbursement to the housing authority. That's not an exact number, but it's
And we
in the right neighborhood.
wouldn't be worried about purchasing everything that's in yellow because we are looking to acquire them being through eminent domain ourselves, correct?
It's so no final decisions have made on that. It is, I would say it is within the realm of options to explore.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I know kind of along some of those questions I guess, is how do we connect potential developers and investors with this process? I mean, to Laura's point about Summer Housing Authority, so you said contact Housing Authority, but, kind of maybe laying that out a little more clear so they know who to contact. I know when also Councilman Spencer, mentioned that same comment of the email that would come back from Mr. Drury to council about that interest. So how do you get them connected with, how do you get that acquisition piece connected with the city or housing authority?
Well, with the housing authority, I'm sure that the executive director, Michelle Wessler, would be able to entertain any questions. I mean, while Ms. Wessler's knew that the housing authority has certainly gone through this process at least twice now with several different properties. I think they would have a little bit of familiarity with it. But if someone needed an introduction or an explanation of what they're attempting to do, city staff is always willing to help out and make those connections. So I would say either reach out directly to the housing authorities, particularly Michelle Wessler, who's the executive director, or, myself, Mr. Sanders, we'd be happy to make the appropriate introductions for anyone that's particularly interested.
Okay, so I think with that, I would say that at least with Mr. Sanders and Mr. Molman, that anyone wanting to email the two of you, of course, is your first initial and last name in jeffersoncity.mo.gov at Jefferson City. So
Now with the city, the areas that are not owned by the housing authority, that question becomes a lot more difficult because we don't own those properties. They can't effectively be marketed because we don't own them. The fact of ownership and our ability to acquire and dispose of them does not become something that is any more than speculation until an acquisition process has taken place, or at least begun in some way. And so it's a tricky question because, someone says, hey, I'm really interested in XYZ building. I need to get in there and take a look at it to see if I would actually be interested. Well, we don't own it. We can't let people into private property. We can go in certain types of situations in order to secure the building, to resecure the building, to make sure it's, not being illegally occupied or something like that. But we can't have open houses of properties that we don't own. That's a trespass. And so, in certain types of situations, if we need some outside help to help us in our endeavors, that could be occasionally allowed, but it would be a murky legal framework in which we could start having open houses on buildings that we don't own.
Thank you.
So that becomes a lot more difficult. That's really kind of the crux of the matter of why we've had trouble over the past 5 years of saying, why don't we just open this up and let anyone make a bid for it? Well, we don't own it.
Mayor, I'm sorry.
Yes, Mr. Sanders.
I believe Michelle is online
Oh,
and has
wonderful.
raised her hand indicating she'd like to speak.
Thank you. Ms. Wessler, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I just wanted to reiterate that we don't own the properties yet either. Can you hear me?
No, I think now we can. I feel like we turned you up maybe now. Yes.
Okay.
Now we can hear you.
We don't own the properties yet. I just wanted to make sure that that's understood.
Similar to us, I guess, and kind of in the same.
No, they're much further along in the process. It's a technical question. They're very, 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 very close to having that title in hand. So, but it's a technical question of whether or not they own it. So,
it's got a few more papers to sign and a a little bit more time for Ms. Busher to respond.
Okay, so going through that legal process. Thank you for that clarification, Michelle. We appreciate you being on here in the partnership with Housing Authority.
Thank you.
And I'll see if council has any further, of course, questions and comments, and I'll take up Councilman Fitzwater and then also ask if Mr. Sanders or Mr. Kroll has anything to add as well. I have not called on either of you if we've missed anything here as well, but we'll start with Councilman Fitzwater, who has his hand up.
Did you want to add anything before I?
If I could just kind of briefly go over this map and some of the things that we were intending to
Okay.
spend the money on that might expand on what Mr. Molman was talking about.
Wonderful. Do we have those on the screen? Are they available for the screen or?
I don't believe the map
Okay.
is, but I can use the street addresses.
Okay.
I'll try to be brief.
Thank you.
Mr. Molman said
Oh,
that.
is your mic on? Is the mic on? Oh. Okay. Maybe we might need to mute the screen. Maybe, is that what you're saying? Okay. And your mic is on, Mr. Sanders?
Yes, my
Okay.
mic is on.
All right, great.
Yeah, I'll give it another shot. So 104 and 108 Jackson, Mr. Molman referred to using federal funds. We haven't gone out to bid, so we don't know how much more money we would have to add to the federal funds we have on those two properties. Likewise, on 114 and 429, those are repairs. We, again, don't know what that cost would be, but we plan to do some sort of roof, not necessarily repair, but prevent water from getting in. It's a slate roof. Certainly the cost to repair that would be expensive. We're thinking of a rubber membrane. And the funeral home, the issues with that property are basically the two porches on the entrance, the main entrance off of Capitol and the one off of Jackson. We're either going to have to support those up or see if they need to come down. So I just kind of want to expand on those costs. We don't know what those are, so that the council is aware that those might vary.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you.
The supplemental appropriation contains our best estimate of what those repair costs would be.
Thank you. Councilman Fitzwater.
Thank you. And I just want to thank everybody that showed up tonight and made comments, and for the people that took time to email us. This truly is a partnership, and I know a number of people in this room have been working on this issue. I just wanted to give a little background of how I got to this point. I'm not going to speak for the other 9 council members. They know what thought process they went through, but I think it was at my first meeting 5 years ago, we had the second of the overlay projects for Capitol Avenue. And I believe that night was one of the first votes we took. And part of how I got here is the frustration of over 5 years of watching incredible properties just rot while we were going through process. So initially, when we began the discussions, it was to try to energize, and I think everybody in the room can see how complicated this process is because there are so many entities involved. And my thought process was, if we can, I know staff was coming to us one at a time. For the ones that finally made it all the way through the process, we were allocating the dollars, and the discussion started. There are some, and I think many of the speakers indicated, there are some that are going to have to disappear. My intention was never to wipe out all of them. I mean, clearly, if there are properties that can be saved, that is the best option for our community. But someone has to make that decision. And I, as a council member, I'm not a structural engineer. I mean, I've done construction work in my past, but I've got to trust experts, which I think she just left. But I mean, she indicated that, and a couple of others, that when we do get to that point where we have to say, we've got to demolish the building, that we have the adequate funds to be able to do what's right for our community. Because people come up to me, I'm sure they come up to other council members and say, what are you guys doing with those properties on Capitol Avenue? Because if you do just the eyeball test, and I realize that that's not the end all and be all in what we're going to do with these properties, but it leads a lot of people to believe. So I think what we were trying to do is encourage, we've got to move this process forward before everything there just rots away, and many more are going to have to be destroyed. So I appreciate the input. What I have always tried to do as council is, let's have a dialogue. Let's have an adult discussion. Let's decide what things need to be done. What's it going to cost? But at the end of the day, let's do it and get it taken care of. And hopefully we can move on as a city. Again, there's some hopefully properties in there that will not have to go through this process. I mean, I made the comments at the last meeting. We're looking to invest $100 to $200 million down the street at the prison, or us and private developers. This is a critical area, pulling our capital, and as Ms. Stitt indicated, the prison project and all the work that she's doing down there. And, you know, I talked to Deb Brown, and she said, man, I really wish I'd have bought something on Capitol Avenue. And I said, well, if we do our work right and we get that prison project, we're going to blow through, and that whole area of town is going to expand. So I appreciate the input. I mean, we need a lot of dialogue. It's a complicated process. I think we've got good people trying to advise us. I'm just trying to take the information I get from professionals and process it and say, we can't wait another 5 years. We've got to do something. And you know, if it's nothing more than getting this dialogue so we can get the community giving us input in how we do it, and let's do it the right way. But at the end of the day, something has to happen to some of those buildings. And we've got developers, and I've talked to developers that are frustrated that they would like bigger chunks of property. Now, that doesn't mean you have to knock over good buildings to create that, but if that's the eventual outcome, it helps us for people that are looking bigger picture. So I appreciate the work that's gone into it and the information. Again, I appreciate everybody that emailed. I read every one of them, and I appreciate the comments. And you know, my commitment is to try to move this process. My name's at the top of the bill, and I'm proud to have it there because I think that gives council some opportunities to do what's right. So thanks to everybody that showed up tonight.
Thank you, Councilman Fitzwater. Any other comments? Councilman Schreiber?
We've talked about Capitol Avenue for a long period of time. This isn't anything that's just come up recently. And just like the MSP redevelopment that we've talked about for about 15 years, it was never our intention that everything at MSP would be saved. That was never the intention of the process to begin with. We know that there has to be a marriage, for lack of a better term, of the MSP project and Capitol Avenue. The thing that has been so frustrating, years ago, I talked to Mr. Bisher when he was alive, and he basically told me that the reason he bought the properties up was because he didn't want to see Capitol Avenue deteriorate. He told me that himself. Gave me some pictures of the funeral home back before the columns were added. Those columns are not original on the front of the building. I still have a picture and gave Sonny a copy of it as well. But I've also been through the buildings. I've looked at them. The Sonny Sanders and some of the other staff members have been very, very good about letting me walk down through the area and looking at them. Drive down Parsons Way from Jackson over to Adams Street, and you can see the condition that a lot of them are in. You know, they're the kind of thing that's a nightmare for a firefighter. Stairwells blocked, people getting in. One instance, there was a ladder that they actually put up ladder rungs in a tree, nailed them to a tree so they could get in on the second story and get in the buildings. And so that stuff's going on pretty constantly. Can a lot of them be rehabbed? Well, I don't know. Some of them can be, certainly. But the important thing is, as Mr. Mullman pointed out, is that we have to have a way for us to get acquisition to the properties. People think, well, we could just go in as a city. No, we've got to have due process. And that's what this is all about. It has to be a legal process. It can be a very painful process in a lot of instances. People say, well, why can't you do this or why can't you do that? Well, that's why we have a city attorney to help us with this process. So I want to thank everybody for coming. Just about everybody that spoke tonight, I know personally. I myself am a member of the historic city of Jefferson, have been for many years. I love this town as much as anybody. I applaud those people that have been able to do things, Capitol Avenue and other areas as well. But we've got to be able to work together to get this accomplished. And it's not an easy process. So, again, thank you, and we'll see what happens and we'll try to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Schreiber. And since you brought up the Busher family, unfortunately, that Barbara Busher owns every property on this list. It's my understanding, every property, not just a few of them, not just part of them, all of them. Now, under the blight study, there were a few other property owners, the ones that we had looked at, but everyone. So I think it shows, and I know some people have either pointed fingers at the city or have had some frustration, understandably so, but they are not owned by the city. We can't own them. This is what we're doing now that they've deteriorated so badly that this is really the only option available now that they are in that deteriorated state. But certainly it has been at the hands of the property owner, in this case, Barbara Busher. So certainly appreciate council, their commitment over the years to Capitol Avenue. We've seen some great success stories over the year, and we're right on the edge of seeing more with the redevelopment of Ivy Terrace, getting closer to completion, and some of these others. So there are many others, and we've certainly had our challenges between the deterioration and the tornado, but certainly seeing it come back and having this effort and having the interest in the community come forward. It is a two-way street. We need the council's participation, and we need the public's interest, and investors and developers to come forward as well to further this process along. And that's what this has done, is brought all of that together. This bill has certainly done that. The bill is introduced only at this time. Are there any other questions, comments, deliberation of council before we close the discussion on Bill 2021-93? Okay, didn't miss anybody there. All right, thank you all. With that, we will take that up at our next meeting for a vote. Appreciate everybody's time tonight. Why don't we do a 2-minute break? Is that a good thing? Anybody else need a 2-minute? So we'll clear, I'm sure some of you may want to leave after that. So we'll do a 2-minute break, and then we'll take up the rest of the agenda. Thank you.
Yes, please. Yeah. Wait. Maybe I'll.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, sure, sure, sure.
You guys are taking these selfies together. All right, how are we doing? 1, 2, yeah. Right. Yeah. Here. Great. But yeah. Yeah, but well, I think so. That's so bad. It's pretty here. Month early.
No. Very nice. Very sensitive.
Should you back?
Okay. Nicole, did I hear you're on a deadline? Do we need to do the MSP to get you by your deadline tonight? Did I just hear that? Okay. By 9, okay. Is there any objection to get in by Nicole's deadline? Okay. All right, and I know some of you have been waiting patiently, a few of you, okay. So we are going to reconvene here, everybody, and we are going to take up, let's see here, sorry. All right, thanks for everybody's patience. We are going to start with Resolution 15C so that a couple people can get in their deadline. Mrs. Donaldson, yes. Yes.
A resolution approving a land swap agreement between the state of Missouri and the city.
Mr. Molman.
Thank you. This resolution would approve an agreement between the city of Jefferson and the state of Missouri. This agreement is a land swap between the state and the city over at the MSP redevelopment area. The land in question, the state currently owns about 2 acres. That is currently the site of Housing Unit 5. The city would receive that property under a 99-year lease under this agreement. The form of the lease is attached to the agreement itself. In exchange for that 99-year lease, it's a ground lease. The state would receive approximately 6 acres. I think the number is actually a little bit lower than 6 acres, but it's approximately 6 acres currently owned by the city, which is east of Chestnut Street, still over there at the MSP north of Capitol Avenue. And so that would be deeded to the state by via quitclaim deed. So the property that the city would be receiving is, as some of you may recall, is the proposed location of the hotel and a portion of the convention center that is part of the MSP redevelopment plan that was put forward by the master developer, approved back in June of 2020. Under this agreement, the state has additionally agreed to pay for half of the construction of the extension of Chestnut Street north from Capitol Avenue to basically the river. And also, the state has agreed to pay for 1/2 of the relocation costs of the gas chamber up into the upper yard, if that is proven to be a viable project. So that it is my understanding the state is currently looking at a scope of work to what that would look like in the cultural and then physical impact to that structure. And so, but essentially this agreement says that if that project were to move forward, that the state would pay for half of the costs of relocating that structure. And then once relocated, the remaining property that the gas chamber currently sits on would be deeded over to the city. It's a fairly basic agreement that took a long time to get here, but this has been approved by the Office of Administration. We worked a long time on this agreement, took a long time to get here. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Molman. Are there any questions? Do we have a motion to, I'm sorry, Councilman Fitzwater? We have a motion and second and taking up some comments.
Turn my mic on. I appreciate all the work that's been done on this. When I moved to town 20 years ago, I mean, I was amazed that we did not have a convention center in this town. And I know this is not specifically all the pieces, but we're getting closer. And this is a very important piece. And I thank the CVB and Luke at JC Rep for the work that they've done to kind of help us pull these final pieces together. And I know Councilman Schreiber has been incredibly instrumental in getting us to this point. We made a decision point at the last meeting to start a process. We've been working on putting dollars together for infrastructure, and I know Mr. Molman and you, Mayor, have been working very hard with the state of Missouri to pull this through in a situation over there where there's not a lot getting done. So I think the structure that we put in place is one that we could get through and we can get this project moving. So I would encourage everybody, one, to support it. And I think it is going to be incredible for our city. And again, thanks for all the work, and I'll defer to my colleague.
Councilman Schreiber?
This is something that the entire council and some folks that were council people before we were here have worked on very hard, and you can all be proud if we do move forward with this. We probably made more progress in the last year or year and a half than all the other time. And it's all come together in working with our other partners, being the state, certainly the Office of Administration right now, and the county as well. And I want to thank Mr. Molman and his staff for all the work, and you, Madam Mayor, for everything. I am more enthusiastic about this than I've been ever since we moved out of the prison in 2004. And there are people that are just waiting for the opportunity to do something over there, and it's going to make a heck of a difference for our community if we can pass this. So thank you, all of you.
Thank you, Councilman Schreiber. Mr. Molman?
So just to give a general, more broader clue into the overall project. So this land swap represents a major hurdle that had to be cleared before we could really start working on the development agreement in absolute terms. So the risk of not acquiring the land was too great to really spend a whole lot of resources, private resources on the developer's standpoint before, dropping a lot of resources working on that development agreement and the financing stack. Once this is approved, it is my intention and my expectation that we will move rapidly toward a development agreement. The development agreement, despite my earlier doubts, I've been proven able to both walk and chew gum. And so we've been working on this agreement, but also on details on the development agreement and what that would look like as we move toward official negotiations, now that real resources can be tied into working on the development agreement. And so that is the next step, is the redevelopment agreement with the master developer. That is probably my number one priority, is working on that, and working on that on a very nice clip in order to start moving forward with real tangible results toward the redevelopment. So, that's where we're going. As soon as this is passed, then the real work begins. So it's hard to imagine a lot of this has already been just preliminary work. But once this gets passed, we can really start moving in toward the heavy lifting on the redevelopment agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Molman. Any other questions, comments, deliberation? Roll call, please.
Schreiber,
Aye.
Spencer,
Aye.
Spicer,
Aye.
Vogt,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wiseman.
Aye.
Fitzwater,
Aye.
Hensley.
Aye.
Kimna,
Aye.
Lester.
Aye.
Resolution passes. And thank you for everyone's support on that. Also appreciate we have with us, Luke Holtschneider, like you mentioned before, and Diane Gillespie for being here in support as well, and sitting through a little extra long meeting. And I appreciate all you've done also to further this project along. And Mr. Molman, I know you'll also extend our thanks to Commissioner Zellers, Ken Zellers of OA, for all of his really hitting the ground running and getting this going in that office for us. And then, of course, all of our legislators, our state lawmakers, from our local state reps and senators all the way up to Lieutenant Governor and Governor, who've been very supportive of this. So thank you. And okay, we're on item 11, consent agenda. Is there a motion? You're welcome. You know what? We have one other person who's been sitting in here. Would it be fair that we could take up the parking? Is that okay? Okay, so since we're kind of jumping around, and as late as it is, Becky Richards is also patiently waiting. If I missed anyone else who's here on a bill, just raise your hand. But that would be bills introduced 2021-91.
An ordinance of the city of Jefferson, Missouri, amending chapter 19, motor vehicles and traffic, schedule J, parking prohibited, by the addition of one space on the east side of West Circle Drive.
Mr. Marash?
Thank you. I think the clerk indicated the location very well. Just one space, just south of North Circle, intersection with West Circle. Basically, requests like this go to Transportation and Traffic Commission, which is just a citizen commission put together by the council to review traffic regulations, parking, this kind of thing in neighborhoods especially. These are typically neighborhood-driven requests. There's no necessarily, a staff, other than we make sure it doesn't violate certain standards, but we let the neighborhoods drive these requests with the commission. And in this case, it doesn't violate anything to remove this parking. It had been taken up in years past, and the commission at that time elected to install an actual stop sign at the intersection. You might notice in many residential areas, there's not stop signs installed at all the intersections, it's just kind of a courtesy kind of a thing. And that's pretty common throughout the city. And this one too was brought forward by one of the neighborhoods. I know there's a lot of discussion about it at the meeting. I wasn't there particularly, but heard about it. So try to answer any questions from our standpoint.
So Mr. Maresh, now that after hearing Mrs. Richards' testimony about that she's no longer parking the vehicle there that was in question, although her mother is parking there temporarily, does that change the dynamic of this at all if the other vehicle that was causing the issue, or no?
I wouldn't think so. But somebody can still park there, whatever they want to park there.
Okay.
And again, enforcement of these kind of things in neighborhoods, it's difficult. And I know the police sits in on the commission as well. They're neighborhood complaint driven, and I'm pretty sure they've had complaints about this as well over the years. So we're kind of
Any
refereeing.
other questions? Councilman Spencer?
So how many complaints were there on this issue in particular? Or is that a PD question?
I don't know the exact number. I don't know if,
Without having the information beforehand, I couldn't say either. We did receive some complaints on it in the past that went to the transportation, but I don't have that exact number.
Any other questions? Oh, Councilman Lester?
I know, I attended that meeting of Transportation Commission, and several people spoke about the problems, and before the meeting, I'd been over there a couple of times and just to see what the area was like. And yes, if a vehicle is parked there, you just cannot see, and you have to get almost all the way out in the street, in the middle of the street, to be able to see whether there's any traffic.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Councilwoman, sorry, Ward?
I concur, and,
Okay.
and I attended also the meeting, and there was a large presence of neighbors that were concerned about not being able to see, and had a lot of close calls.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, this is just a bill introduced, so with that, we'll continue on the agenda. Is there anyone else here on any other bills, though, that are waiting? Okay. And I wonder, Mrs. Richards, the best way to correspond, I know you may have some more comments that maybe could staff get her some information on how she could reach out to council too with maybe further comments, or is there any questions? I know you've waited this long. I hate to cut you off if there is anything you need to add, but that's up to council unless there's any objections to that. Okay. If you could just quickly give us your any further questions then, and we will take that into consideration. Thank you.
Be very brief. I appreciate the length of time that you spent here tonight. And we first learned of this being taken to the city from neighbors who were appalled that this was being taken up. And we didn't know what to think of it. We didn't know what the issue was. These people were very much against it. These people reached out to us that did attend by Zoom, and they were very upset with how the area was represented. They're very much in opposition against it. They have family that come and visit from time to time that park in that area as well. I think, again, the issue was the van. It's a 15-seat passenger van. And again, it's not there anymore. I understand at the previous meeting, comments were made about why don't they park in their driveway? Well, if you were to drive past in the evening, my husband parks his pickup truck in our driveway every single night. I'm sure it's there now. He wouldn't be here today because it's very upsetting to him, and I'm trying to be as respectful to our neighborhood and their concerns. And having lived in that neighborhood since 1963, it just shocks me that neighbors don't come and knock on your door and talk to you, because that's the way it used to be. And I could tell you who lived in every single house in the 1960s. And there are still some of those same neighbors. And I did write some of that in the letter that I sent to the Traffic Commission. And I would just please advocate for us not restricting parking there, because my stepmother, while she doesn't live with us, she does come to visit from time to time. And I would hate for her to have to call ahead, have to have somebody move, or to park across the street and walk further when she's 96 years old. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Richards. And sounds like it may be still a bit of a safety issue, so we'll let council take that up at the next meeting. And I'm sorry, was there another? Councilman Fitzwater? Yes. Or
That's okay.
Councilman
I
Spencer?
just wanted to ask you.
yes, Richards?
Mrs. Richards, how was you notified? Again? Okay, so you didn't get any kind of direct mailing of how?
To different neighbors, and that's how it's telling us that there was a petition going around, but nothing to us direct.
So nothing from the city mailed to you?
The city we did get a letter from them in February. Yes, we did, 2 days before the first hearing, which could not fit in and as it turned out, I think that meeting was snowed out anyway. But the next meeting, I was prevented from attending because of work. So I'm glad I got to come tonight. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And I do agree, if neighbors would talk to neighbors about issues just in general, that's always helpful. Certainly, that'll be up at the next meeting. So now let's go to item 11, consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 12, bills introduced 2021-90.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, amending Chapter 19, Motor Vehicles and Traffic, Schedule J, Parking Prohibited by the modification of the east side of Buena Vista.
Mr. Marash?
Basically goes from Edmonds to Narrow Street.
Any questions? All right, 2021-92.
An ordinance repealing Chapter 25, Article 3 of the Jefferson City Code and enacting in lieu thereof a new chapter, Article 3, relating to the Urban Redevelopment Corporation's Law.
Mr. Molman?
Thank you. This bill would amend portions of Chapter 25, Article 3. Essentially, the goal of this bill is to update and modernize our procedures relating to development plans and the review of development plans under Chapter 353, the Urban Redevelopment Corporations Law. I previously spoke about this issue at the Public Works and Planning. Essentially said that our procedures contained in city code apply. They contemplate situations where the urban redevelopment corporations that bring redevelopment plans to the city are controlled by private interests. And that is the way the Urban Redevelopment Corporations Law essentially operated for the first portion of its life, passed back in the 1980s. Since then, there's really been a revolution on how these corporations are utilized, where the communities are establishing their own urban redevelopment corporations and using the city to help direct these redevelopment corporations and really having the city in control of the redevelopment process as opposed to approving a plan and then giving it over to the developer to make sure it gets implemented as a representative of the city. And so these provisions really truly aren't really applicable to how we do Urban Redevelopment Corporation 353 plans. So back in 2020, the city voted to establish a 353 corporation that it currently exists, that is known as the Jefferson Redevelopment Corporation. And so in reviewing redevelopment plans, we have gotten opinion from the attorneys at Gilmore and Bell that says, yeah, while your processes truly really apply to these privately held urban redevelopment corporations, the result is a process that really isn't used anymore, but it's still on the books. And so in situations where there could be financing that's attached to a redevelopment plan, these kind of competing procedures create difficulty for bond underwriters and bond counsel have to write opinions that basically say all the provisions of law that are necessary to approve this financing have been followed. And it's because our code, it appears that is inconsistent in places with state law. And so instead of trying to rewrite a procedure to be consistent in law, what this bill essentially does, it relies on the state law to provide the procedure and then inserts the appropriate procedures where the state law says, in city, you get to have a decision on this particular portion of the procedure. That in particular is the amount of notice that is provided to the to the various taxing districts that are affected by potential tax abatements. And so this ordinance identifies a notice period of 15 days that's consistent with our zoning procedures, and then really essentially leaves the rest of the process to the more fleshed out process that is contained in state law. And so, this is on recommendation of our bond counsel. It says instead of trying to set up your own procedure and having to follow both, that it is better to have a single procedure that relies on state law and then chipping in only where the state law says, city, you need to put in some input here. And so we recommend approval of this to really bring our procedures that are of questionable applicability anyway in line with state law.
Thank you, Mr. Mullman. Any questions or comments on the bill? Right, we've already taken up number 93. Item 13, bills pending. Those are already taken up. Nothing on the informal. Item 15, we've done the 3 resolutions. So that brings us to presentations from the gallery on other topics. There's nobody signed up unless I missed anyone online. And item 17, any council and staff discussion of the presentation topics. 18, any new business. 19, any unfinished business. And item 20, Councilwoman Wiseman.
To adjourn.
Second, third, fourth. Everybody, thanks for your time this evening and have a great night. Thanks.